Under a crimson sky, the camera drifts slowly over endless dunes. The wind hums softly, carrying grains of sand that have swallowed centuries of memory. The silence feels alive, heavy, almost breathing, like the earth itself is guarding a secret. Somewhere beneath this vast emptiness once stood a civilization that has completely vanished, leaving behind not even the faintest trace of its name. No scrolls, no carvings, no whispers of language, nothing. It is as if time itself inspired to erase their existence. And yet, faint echoes persist buried in myth, in impossible artifacts, in patterns that refuse to fit neatly into history's accepted narrative. We've been taught that human civilization began around 6,000 years ago, when the first cities of Mesopotamia rose between the Tigris and Euphrates. That's where the textbooks say humanity took its first great leap, from primitive nomads to builders of culture. But what if that story isn't beginning? What if it's just the beginning of what survived? Imagine an older world, one so advanced and interconnected that its disappearance was not merely a fall, but complete erasure, a civilization swallowed whole by nature and time, leaving humanity to restart from ashes. The more we dig into the earth, the more contradictions appear. In deserts, under oceans, beneath jungles, pieces of something impossible keep surfacing. Structures carved with precision, tools no primitive hands could have made, stones transported over impossible distances, astronomical alignments mapped long before telescopes existed. Each discovery challenges the comfort of our linear timeline. Every new clue seems to whisper that history is not a straight line of progress, but a circle that loops through creation, destruction, and rediscovery. The story of humanity, as we know it, is written by the survivors. Those who lived long enough to record their version of events define what we now call history. But silence, true, unbroken silence, often belongs to those who came before them. The traces of this lost civilization are not found in libraries, but in landscapes, submerged temples beneath the Indian Ocean, colossal stone blocks lying scattered across Lebanon, and symbols repeated across continents that supposedly never met. How can cultures separated by oceans, separated by millennia, share such identical patterns? Either coincidence is far stranger than we imagine, or something far older once connected them all. The first explorers who stumbled upon these enigmas dismissed them as curiosities. Later, archaeologists called them anomalies. And yet, the anomalies keep multiplying, tools that predate humanity's known rise. Maps drawn before continents took their modern shapes. Myths that describe cities swallowed by the sea or skies filled with fire. These aren't isolated stories. They are memories echoing across time, preserved in different tongues, wearing different masks, but sharing one heartbeat. Modern science explains them away. Coincidences, natural formations, misunderstandings. After all, it's safer to believe that everything fits within the boundaries we already know. But the further we look, the more that safety dissolves. The Earth's crust hides vast libraries of forgotten epics, and every earthquake, every tide, every new excavation seems to open another chapter of a book we thought we'd finished reading. Beneath our feet lies evidence not just of evolution, but of amnesia. Who were they, these people who left no trace? Could they have reached a level of understanding, technological, spiritual, or both, that allowed them to thrive beyond the limits of their age? And if so, what ended them so completely that not even their name survived? Nature's fury? Cosmic disaster? Or perhaps their disappearance was self-inflicted, a warning buried beneath myth. Every ancient civilization that followed, from Sumer to Maya, carried shadows of this forgotten story. Each claimed to have inherited wisdom from the gods, beings who came before the flood, before the dawn of recorded time. Maybe those gods were not divine, but human, remnants of civilization reborn from ruin. As the sun dips behind the horizon, the desert seems to shimmer like a mirage. The camera glides over half-buried ruins, fractured pillars, and weathered stones whose makers are unknown. The narration slows, almost reverent. History remembers conquerors, kings, and empires, but forgets civilizations that didn't merely fall, but vanished. Their memory lingers only as myth, their fingerprints faint but undeniable. We are left with a haunting question. How can something so vast, so advanced, so connected, disappear so completely that even time itself seems unaware they ever existed? The answer may lie not in what we can see, but in what remains unseen. For the greatest mysteries of our world are not those we have yet to discover. They are those we've already found, but cannot yet understand. As the winds sweep across the dunes once more, the silence deepens, carry with it the unspoken promise of revelation. Somewhere out there, buried under centuries of soil and secrecy, the truth of this lost civilization still waits, waiting for someone to listen, waiting for someone to remember. It began with a fragment, an object so ordinary at first glance, yet so utterly out of place that it shattered the confidence of everything we thought we knew about human history. A team of archaeologists, working deep in the Turkish highlands, unearthed a carved stone unlike anything within the region's cultural lineage. Its patterns matched no known civilization. Its material came from quarries hundreds of miles away, and when carbon tested, it predated agriculture itself. It shouldn't exist. And yet, there it was, a whisper from a forgotten age. The moment it was uncovered, questions began spreading quietly through the academic world, like a tremor before an earthquake. Similar discoveries soon followed. Artifacts found where they shouldn't be, made with methods their supposed makers couldn't have known. Polished granite bowls thousands of years older than Egypt's dynasties. Metallic fragments found embedded in ancient rock strata. And a series of identical symbols carved on cave walls separated by oceans. Every new clue seemed to mock the boundaries of our accepted history. Scientists labeled them out-of-place artifacts, a convenient phrase that explained nothing but maintained order in the narrative. To question that order was professional suicide. Yet, for a few restless minds, the anomalies became impossible to ignore. Among those who dared to look closer was Dr. Helena Voss, a field archaeologist who had spent years cataloging Bronze Age relics in the Mediterranean. Her turning point came when she compared petroglyphs from South America and Northern Africa, both depicting the same geometric figure, a circular star pattern surrounded by concentric lines. When she presented her findings, she was told it was a coincidental motif. But how many coincidences could stack before coincidence itself became the unlikeliest theory of all? Voss began to gather evidence quietly, piecing together an invisible trail left behind by something ancient, something that shouldn't exist by any conventional timeline. Meanwhile, deep-sea explorations uncovered structures off the coast of Japan and India, stone formations that bore the unmistakable marks of human design, stairways descending into blackness, symmetrical columns rising from the ocean floor. Mainstream academia called them natural formations, shaped by currents and time. But to divers who had seen them up close, the geometry was too perfect, too intentional. The walls bore tool marks. Some stones were aligned with astronomical precision. If true, it meant these cities existed before the seas rose, before the last ice age, nearly 12,000 years ago. As word of these discoveries spread beyond the scientific community, amateur historians, independent researchers, and even skeptics began noticing something strange. Artifacts, ruins, and oral traditions across the globe began to align like puzzle pieces scattered across continents. It wasn't a single location. It was a pattern, a global footprint left behind by something unified and forgotten. From Peru's megalithic walls to Turkey's Göbekli Tepe, from sunken temples in the Bay of Cambay to unexplained stone circles in Africa's interior, there was a rhythm, a signature, a pulse. It was as if pieces of one civilization had been scattered by a great storm and buried in the world's corners. Yet the question remained, how could such a civilization disappear so thoroughly that even its name evaporated from memory? History preserves even the smallest tribes through myth or relic, but here nothing remained. Only fragments that defied categorization. The more the evidence grew, the more resistance it faced. Institutions dependent on fixed timelines pushed back. Researchers lost grants. Museums locked away artifacts labeled indeterminate. But some refused to stop. They began to suspect that what was buried wasn't just ruins. It was the truth itself. The deeper they looked, the stranger the patterns became. Certain stones bore microscopic tool impressions, resembling modern machine cuts. Metal fragments contained alloys that modern metallurgy could barely replicate without advanced furnaces. Cave drawings once dismissed as symbolic now seemed to depict machinery or celestial events, comets, solar alignments, perhaps even maps. None of this fit the narrative of early primitive humans. These were not the crude hands of nomads, but the deliberate precision of engineers, astronomers, and artisans working with a level of coordination lost to history. A growing number of archaeologists began to whisper privately about a possibility they could never say aloud in public, that perhaps the human story is older, far older, than we've ever dared to imagine. That long before Sumer, Egypt, or the Indus, there existed an age of knowledge, an epoch wiped out by disaster, reduced to myth and forgotten by design. The known world, they suggested, might just be a second act in a much longer human drama. For the skeptics, this was dangerous thinking, romantic, conspiratorial, even heretical. But for those standing before ancient stones that refused to fit the script, doubt had already set in. How could the ancients know things they shouldn't? How could similar symbols, structures, and measurements appear across the planet without shared communication? Either humanity had achieved global contact tens of thousands of years ago, or these civilizations inherited knowledge from a single older source, a progenitor lost in the sands of deep time. As the evidence accumulated, one truth became undeniable. Something had been here. Something vast, intelligent, and connected had once moved across the earth. And though time erased its face, its fingerprints remained, hidden in plain sight, embedded in the foundations of later empires, whispered in myths that outlasted their makers. The world was beginning to listen again, even if it didn't yet understand what it was hearing. That was the first whisper, the tremor beneath history's crust that made the unthinkable suddenly plausible. It was the echo of a civilization that refused to stay buried, rising faintly through stone, tide, and silence. Every anomaly, every strange artifact, was another voice calling out from the void, daring us to remember what we were never meant to forget. And for those who chose to follow that voice, the journey had only just begun. Before recorded time, before kings and calendars, before the first words etched into clay, there may have existed an entire chapter of humanity that history has chosen to forget. We call the beginning of civilization the rise of Sumer, roughly 6,000 years ago, but the earth itself tells a different story. One written not in ink, but in stone and climate and buried memory. Beneath the comfortable boundaries of our timeline, traces of something ancient stir, silent but undeniable. It's as if the planet is whispering that our known beginning was never the beginning at all. Archaeology teaches that civilization emerged once humans learned to farm, to settle, to write. Yet scattered evidence around the world suggests organized communities, monumental structures, and technological awareness thousands of years before agriculture even existed. In Turkey's southeastern plain stands Göbekli Tepe, a site so old it redefined the meaning of ancient. Its massive stone pillars, arranged in concentric circles, were carved and erected around 12,000 years ago by hunter-gatherers who supposedly lacked the means to build even basic villages. No one can explain how or why they built something so complex before farming began. It's as if humanity woke up one day already knowing how to build temples to the stars. These discoveries shatter the comforting linear story of progress. Civilization, it seems, didn't arise slowly from ignorance to knowledge. It may have been reborn from memory, echoes of forgotten order passed down after a global catastrophe. The flood myths that stretch across every continent might not be allegory at all, but survival stories retold by descendants of a world already lost. Our ancestors, emerging from the ruins of that vanished epoch, might have built early settlements not out of discovery, but out of recollection. They weren't learning civilization. They were trying to remember it. In the Sahara Desert, satellite imaging reveals ghost rivers beneath the sands, ancient waterways that once nourished cities long before the desert formed. The Indian subcontinent hides submerged ruins beneath the Gulf of Kambat, their stone blocks dating back nearly 9,000 years, long before the rise of Egypt. On the opposite side of the planet, in the Americas, megalithic structures appear older than their supposed builders. And deep beneath the Amazon jungle, soil formations called geoglyphs mark vast geometric patterns, now overgrown and forgotten. Everywhere we look, the ground resists our narrative. It hints at an age when humanity was already building, already mapping, already reaching for the divine. Science hesitates to speak of that time. The record is too fragmented, the evidence too contradictory. But to those who look closer, patterns emerge. The oldest sites across the globe align to celestial bodies, the rising of Sirius, the equinox sun, the constellation of Orion. Ancient humans did not just survive. They observed, measured, and built with mathematical precision. How did people, supposedly fresh out of the Stone Age, achieve astronomical understanding rivaling modern science? Did they discover it independently or inherit it? The deeper we go, the more the puzzle grows. The Sumerians, who appear to have invented civilization from nothing, spoke of gods who descended from the sky to teach them laws, architecture, and agriculture. In the Andes, the Inca told stories of Viracocha, a bearded man who came from the sea after a great flood to bring order to chaos. In Egypt, Thoth was said to have preserved ancient wisdom after the world's destruction. Across continents, separated by oceans, the same motif repeats. Teachers from a vanished age, reawakening humanity after disaster. Were these merely myths, or fragmented memories of survivors passing down remnants of lost knowledge? Even language itself hints at deeper roots. Words like Atlantis, Aslan, and Astal echo across mythologies, describing places that sank, lands that disappeared. If these were inventions, why do so many cultures invent the same story? If they were metaphors, why do they align so perfectly with geological events like the rapid sea level rise at the end of the last ice age? Perhaps the answer is simpler and more disturbing. Humanity once reached a height of organization, technology, and understanding that ended in cataclysm, leaving behind scattered tribes who carried fragments of that memory forward. Our ancestors may have tried to preserve their lost world in the only way they could, in symbols, in myth, in monumental stone that might survive when all else perished. That's why Göbekli Tepe was buried intentionally, as if its builders wanted to protect it from something. That's why flood myths describe not only destruction but rebirth. The gods did not vanish. They became the distant ancestors, remembered only in stories as humanity slowly relearned how to build and plant and write. But why was that chapter forgotten? Some say time eroded it naturally, ice, water, and tectonic shifts swallowing everything. Others believe it was erased deliberately, perhaps by the survivors themselves. To start over, they may have chosen to forget, to bury not only their ruins but the knowledge that doomed them. Maybe they knew that remembrance was dangerous. Today, as archaeologists uncover new sites older than all known civilizations combined, the academic world hesitates, trapped between evidence and belief. It's easier to cling to a neat timeline than to accept a human past measured not in thousands, but in tens of thousands of years. But truth, like buried stone, always resurfaces. The earth has a memory, and it remembers far more than we do. We are standing on the surface of an ancient cycle, one where civilization rises, falls, and begins again. The age before history may not be myth at all, but a forgotten prelude to our story. The known world is merely the aftershock of something vast, erased by time but not entirely gone. The soil beneath our feet carries whispers of cities older than memory, of builders whose knowledge reached the stars, and of a humanity that has lived, died, and begun again more times than it dares to remember. In the silence of ruins and the echoes of forgotten stone, we begin to sense it, the truth buried under our own timeline. Before recorded time, there was something greater. And though the world has forgotten their names, their shadow stretches beneath every temple, every legend, every map we call ancient. The first civilizations we know may only be the survivors of something that once was everything. In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis completed a map that would later haunt historians for centuries. Drawn on gazelle skin, it depicted not just a familiar outline of Europe and Africa, but also a third continent, one that should not have been known to any sailor of his age. At the map's southern edge lay the coastline of Antarctica, drawn with astonishing precision, centuries before anyone had set eyes on that frozen land. Even more baffling, the shoreline was shown without ice, exactly as it would appear the continent were in a warmer age. How could a 16th century cartographer possess knowledge that modern science only confirmed after the invention of radar and satellite imaging? When the map was rediscovered in 1929, experts dismissed the anomalies as errors, a collage of copied sources stitched together without understanding. But that explanation failed to account for its accuracy. Modern tests comparing the contours of Pyre Reese's Antarctic coast to data from under-ice surveys found a near-perfect match. The more closely scholars studied it, the stranger it became. The admiral himself had annotated the parchment, claiming his sources came from ancient maps from the time of Alexander and from before the flood. The statement was ignored as poetic exaggeration until other mysterious maps began to surface. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531, the Bwatch map of 1737, and even fragments of Egyptian and Babylonian charts all hinted at knowledge of lands that should have been hidden under thousands of feet of ice for tens of millennia. Every attempt to explain them within known history collapsed. Some said early explorers must have circumnavigated the globe long before Columbus. Others argued they copied earlier charts, now lost, from civilizations that predated all known societies. Whatever the origin, one thing was undeniable. Someone at some forgotten time had mapped the Earth as it truly was, before the end of the last ice age. The implications were staggering. If the coastlines of Antarctica were once known and mapped, it meant a seafaring people capable of global navigation existed at least 12,000 years ago. Yet according to our textbooks, humans then were still nomadic hunters, carving flint tools and chasing mammoths across frozen plains. Such knowledge should have been impossible. And yet, here it was, preserved in ink and skin, defying time itself. The map was not an isolated curiosity. It was a window into a vanished world. Historians tried to fit the puzzle into familiar shapes. Maybe ancient mariners had explored farther than assumed. Maybe natural disasters shifted coastlines. But even generous theories couldn't explain the data. The precision of latitude and longitude implied advanced mathematics and instruments that wouldn't exist again until the 17th century. Whoever first charted the globe must have possessed not only ships capable of transoceanic voyages, but also a scientific understanding rivaling that of early modern Europe. How could such a civilization exist, flourish, and vanish without leaving a trace? As the debate raged, more evidence emerged. Polynesian oral tradition spoke of star navigators who crossed entire oceans guided by invisible lines in the sky. Ancient Egyptian reliefs showed boats with sails and hulls curved for deep-sea travel. South American myths told of bearded foreigners arriving by sea long before recorded contact. Each legend, when compared, seemed like a fragment torn from the same forgotten manuscript, a memory of global explorers who mapped the world before history began. The mainstream response was predictable. Coincidence, misinterpretation, wishful thinking. Yet, coincidences began piling into patterns. The Pyre-Reese map was aligned using a mathematical grid that mirrored modern projections used by cartographers today. How could a sailor from the Ottoman court have invented something that wouldn't appear again until the age of satellites? The simplest answer, that he was copying something ancient, was also the most unsettling. Imagine, for a moment, that beneath the myths of Atlantis or Lemuria, there lay not a single lost city, but an entire maritime culture, one that spanned continents. They could have sailed along coastlines that no longer exist, trading knowledge rather than goods, recording the shape of the world as they knew it. Then, when the great ice melted and the seas rose, their ports disappeared beneath the waves, their libraries drowned, their survivors scattered. All that remained were copies of copies, drifting to millennia, finally resurfacing in the hands of a curious admiral who had no idea he was holding a map of the impossible. If this theory is true, it redefines everything we think we know about human origins. Civilization did not simply bloom in Mesopotamia. It may have resurrected itself from fragments of a drowned world. Those ancient mariners could have passed their knowledge to the first Egyptians, to the early Sumerians, to the mysterious builders of megaliths scattered across the globe. What we call the dawn of civilization might actually be the memory of its rebirth. Skeptics still argue the coastlines were coincidence, that natural features can resemble familiar shapes. But every new discovery of underwater ruins, every new sonar scan of submerged cities, adds weight to the theory that our ancestors once knew the full shape of the earth. They were not wandering tribes learning the basics of fire and wheel. They were survivors, carrying fragments of a global map like relics from a dream. The Pyre-Reese map stands today as both evidence and metaphor, a remnant of memory the world tried to forget. It connects the impossible precision of the past with the uncertain arrogance of the present, reminding us that history is not a straight road, but a labyrinth. Somewhere, long before our recorded dawn, there are hands that trace coastlines we have only recently rediscovered, eyes that saw the planet whole. When we look at that ancient parchment, we are not just studying a map. We are staring into the ghost of a civilization that once knew the world and then disappeared without leaving a trace. For centuries, the story of Atlantis has been dismissed as fantasy, a philosopher's allegory, a moral lesson wrapped in myth. Plato's words, written around 360 BCE, tell of a mighty island empire beyond the Pillars of Hercules, a civilization so advanced it became arrogant, angering the gods and sinking beneath the sea in a single night of fire and flood. Scholars have long insisted it was fiction, a cautionary tale about pride and decay. But what if Plato wasn't imagining a story? What if he was remembering one? What if Atlantis was not a metaphor, but a memory of something humanity once knew and lost? Plato claimed his story came from the Egyptian priest Osiris, who told Solon that their civilization was ancient, but Atlantis was older still. They said its downfall happened 9,000 years before their time, placing it eerily close to the end of the last ice age, when sea levels rose catastrophically and reshaped the planet. For generations, that detail was ignored, because it implied an impossible truth, that civilization existed thousands of years before any known culture. But as more ruins are found underwater, and as geological records confirm massive floods and quakes during that period, Plato's timeline begins to sound less like myth and more like survivor's account. Off the coast of Spain, the Azores, and the Caribbean, explorers have found submerged structures that challenge our sense of history. Massive blocks arranged in deliberate geometry, road-like formations disappearing into the deep, and pillars standing eerily upright on the ocean floor. Into the Bahamas, Bimini Road stretches under clear waters like the remains of an ancient harbor. Scientists call it a natural formation, yet its symmetry, its deliberate angles, suggest the opposite. The same story repeats near the Azores, where sonar scans reveal patterns resembling city grids beneath layers of sediment. Could these be the scattered bones of the same civilization Plato described, destroyed by the very floods that mark the boundary between prehistory and our recorded past? The similarities across mythic traditions are too striking to ignore. Nearly every ancient culture, Sumerian, Mayan, Egyptian, Norse, Hindu, preserve a story of a great city or world destroyed by the sea. The Sumerians spoke of Eridu, the city of the first kings, lost beneath floodwaters. The Mayans told of Aslan, the shining homeland swallowed by the ocean. In Hindu texts, the island of Kumari Kendam was said to have vanished under the waves. Across the Atlantic, the Celts spoke of Yas, a city drowned for its arrogance. These were not copies of Plato's tale. They were parallel echoes, carried through different tongues, all remembering the same trauma, the day the world ended and began again. Geological evidence supports at least part of the story. Around 10,800 BCE, the planet experienced a sudden climatic shift known as the Younger Dryas event. The ice sheets melted rapidly, oceans rose more than 100 meters, and coastlines vanished. Entire regions that once supported human life were swallowed overnight. If a global civilization had existed before then, its cities, ports, and monuments would now lie hidden beneath the sea, crushed and silent. What remains today would not be temples, but myths, fragments reserved in memory, distorted by time, retold as legend. The flood that erased Atlantis may not have been punishment from the gods, but nature reclaiming what humanity had built. Modern researchers, from Ignatius Donnelly in the 19th century to Graham Hancock in our time, have pursued this question relentlessly. Their work is often dismissed as pseudoscience, yet they point to a growing body of evidence that suggests advanced culture existed before the recognized dawn of history. Ancient stonework found on islands once above sea level now lies submerged. Megaliths across continents share identical alignments with celestial points. Mathematical ratios repeat from Egypt to Mesoamerica. Coincidence? Or remnants of a shared origin, a network of knowledge that survived in fragments after the world drowned? Even Plato's description matches modern geography in haunting ways. He wrote of an island with concentric rings of land and water, a great plain to the south and mountains to the north. When satellite imagery of the Atlantic floor revealed the mid-Atlantic ridge and strange circular formations near the Azores. Imaginations ignited. Though unproven, the resemblance is chilling. If Atlantis was ever real, its ruins might not lie in one place, but scattered across the ocean, broken by tectonic shifts, buried beneath eons of sediment. Perhaps the world we inhabit now is merely the surface of a deeper, older history sleeping below. But Atlantis is more than a location. It's an idea, a mirror reflecting both our greatness and our fragility. Every empire dreams of eternal power, yet every empire falls. The Atlanteans, as Plato wrote, became corrupted by their own success, forgetting the harmony that once bound them to nature. That arrogance invited their destruction. Whether the story is literal or symbolic, it speaks to something timeless, the cycle of civilization itself. We rise, we reach too far, we collapse, and then we forget. And every time we rediscover the past, we recognize ourselves in its reflection. If Atlantis truly existed, it was not a fantasy, but a warning. It tells us that the world before our own was not primitive, but proud, that its wisdom was vast enough to build wonders, yet powerless to survive the wrath of the earth. It also reminds us that history is not a straight ascent, but a wheel. The knowledge we think we invented may be the faint recollection of something ancient, glimpsed through myth and ruin. Perhaps humanity has risen many times, each age erasing the last, until only legends remain. Somewhere beneath the endless blue of the Atlantic, under miles of water and centuries of silence, lies the truth. Maybe a shattered column still stands in the dark, barnacles clinging to its stone, waiting for someone to see it and remember. The ocean keeps its secrets well, but its memory is eternal. And as we search for Atlantis, we are not just looking for a lost city. We are searching for the missing pages of our own story, the echo of a civilization that vanished without leaving a trace. The Indus Valley civilization, once dismissed as a mere chapter in South Asian prehistory, has steadily emerged as one of the most enigmatic and advanced societies humanity has ever known. Stretching across what is now Pakistan and northwestern India, this ancient culture flourished along the banks of the Indus and Sarasvati rivers around 3300 to 1900 BCE. It was vast, larger than Mesopotamia and Egypt combined, home to millions of people. Yet, when its cities fell silent, they left behind no written chronicles, no royal monuments, no battles etched in stone. Only perfect city grids, standardized bricks, and drains that still astonish modern engineers. Civilization was here unmistakably, but its voice, its language, its beliefs, its story vanished completely. Archaeologists first uncovered Harappa and Mohenjo-daro in the 1920s, expecting to find evidence of early barbarism. Instead, they found urban perfection. Streets ran in straight lines, intersecting at precise right angles. Multi-story homes had indoor plumbing, private wells, and sophisticated drainage systems that rivaled anything built until the 19th century. There were public baths, granaries, and intricate water management systems designed to withstand floods. The citizens of the Indus Valley lived with order and design far ahead of their time. Yet, unlike other ancient societies, there were no palaces, no temples towering above the populace, no evidence of kings or armies. Power here was subtle, perhaps communal. In place of hierarchy, there was harmony. That alone defies everything we think we know about how civilization develops. Even more mysterious is their writing, a script found on thousands of seals and pottery shards, composed of delicate pictographs and symbols. It has never been deciphered. For over a century, linguists, cryptographers, and AI programs have tried to unlock it, but the message remains sealed in silence. Without that key, the soul of the civilization remains hidden. We can see their cities, their trade, their art, but not their thoughts. Were they peaceful merchants? Devout astronomers? Early Democrats? We can only guess. Their seals depict unicorn-like creatures, sacred trees, and strange rituals, hinting at a complex spiritual life. Yet, there are no grand temples or statues of gods, only subtle motifs suggesting that divinity may have been woven into the fabric of daily life rather than exalted in monumental form. Trade connected the Indus cities to Mesopotamia, Sumer, and beyond. Indus seals have been found in ancient Iraq, and Mesopotamian records speak of merchants from a distant land called Maluha. They exported cotton, ivory, gold, and exotic woods, while importing silver and precious stones. This global network flourished without the wars and empires that defined so much of ancient history. The Indus people seemed to prefer balance over conquest, equality over domination. There is little evidence of weapons, no fortresses built to repel enemies. Some historians have dared to call it a civilization without violence. But that harmony makes its disappearance even harder to understand. How does society so vast, so advanced, vanish almost overnight? Around 1900 BCE, the Indus Valley cities began to crumble. Rivers shifted course, floods swept across plains, trade routes collapsed, and agriculture declined. The once great urban centers were gradually abandoned. Yet, the end was not marked by fire or invasion. There are no layers of destruction, no armies sweeping through. It was as if the people simply walked away, leaving everything behind. Some suggest climate change triggered their fall. Monsoons weakened, crops failed, and water sources dried up. Others point to tectonic shifts that diverted the Saraswati River, turning fertile lands into desert. Whatever the cause, the collapse was slow and silent. No conquerors rode to their victory, because there were none. The cities became ghosts long before anyone noticed. And then there is the question of memory. If the civilization was so vast, why do later Indian traditions barely remember it? The Vedic texts, written centuries later, mention no city of bricks, no vast urban culture. Instead, they describe pastoral tribes, gods of fire and wind, and wars among clans. Some scholars once claimed that the Vedic people invaded and destroyed the Indus civilization, but that theory has steadily eroded. The archaeological record shows no such invasion. Instead, a more haunting possibility emerges, that the two cultures merged, and in merging, the memory of the older one faded. The Indus people may have quietly become the ancestors of later Indian civilization, their customs absorbed and transformed until only fragments remained. The sacredness of rivers, the use of seals, the worship of fertility symbols, the geometry of urban design. Yet, there's a deeper question few dare to ask. How did they achieve such precision, such planning, without centralized authority? Their cities, separated by hundreds of miles, were constructed using identical brick sizes and layouts. It's as if they shared a master blueprint, a code of order that governed every settlement. Some researchers believe they followed astronomical alignments, using the stars to plan their cities. Others speculate about lost knowledge of geometry and hydrology far beyond what should have been possible for a Bronze Age culture. Every discovery raises more questions than answers. Who taught them to build this way? Where did their knowledge come from? And why did it vanish with them? In recent years, satellite imagery and geological surveys have revealed that the Saraswati River, long thought to be mythical, once flowed mightily through the heart of the Indus region. Its dry bed matches descriptions from the Rig Veda. This revelation has reshaped the narrative. Perhaps the Indus civilization and early Vedic culture were not separate at all, but phases of a single continuum. If true, then the so-called disappearance of the Indus Valley might not have been extinction, but a transformation, an evolution hidden within mythology. The vanishing may have been cultural, not physical. Yet even this explanation cannot account for the total loss of language and identity that followed. To lose writing, memory, and self-awareness on such a scale suggests a deeper collapse, one not just of systems, but of consciousness. Archaeologists continue to dig, unearthing toys, jewelry, tools, and the quiet elegance of everyday life. Each artifact whispers of a people who live with remarkable order and subtle intelligence. But the more we uncover, the less we understand. How could such an advanced civilization rise so early, without kings or wars, and then vanish so completely that even their name is forgotten? Perhaps they represent not a beginning, but a remembrance, an echo of something older, something lost long before the Indus itself emerged. Could they have inherited fragments of a knowledge that predated them, a knowledge passed down from an even earlier age, the same age that birthed the myth of Atlantis and the flood? If so, the Indus Valley may be more than a mystery of South Asia. It may be a bridge between our recorded history and the forgotten world that came before. In the quiet ruins of Mohenjo-daro, where streets still follow their perfect lines beneath the dust, one feels the ghost of order. The drains are dry, The well's empty, but the silence hums with memory. The people who built this place are gone, but their sense of balance lingers. Far across the ocean, on the rugged highlands and mist-draped valleys of Peru, another mystery rises from the earth. Machu Picchu, the fabled lost city of the Incas. Discovered by the outside world only in 1911 by explorer Hiram Bingham, it seemed at first a secret citadel, untouched by time, perfectly preserved above the clouds. Its stone walls, fitted so precisely that even a blade of grass cannot slip between them, speak of genius. But the more we study it, the less it makes sense. The Incas, brilliant as they were, left no written record explaining how or why it was built. Its purpose, its true age, even its builders, remain questions draped in fog. Was Machu Picchu really an Incan creation, or did they merely inherit it from a forgotten civilization that existed long before them? At first glance, the site seems distinctly Incan. The terrace slopes, the trapezoidal doorways, the temples dedicated to the sun. Yet, beneath the visible layers of Incan architecture lie deeper, older stones, larger, more perfectly cut, and placed without mortar. The lower walls bear the marks of a different era, perhaps even a different people, one with engineering methods lost to time. The Inca themselves claim to have inherited the world from beings they called the Viracochas, tall, pale-skinned figures who came from across the sea after a great flood, bringing knowledge and law. To Western historians, that sounds like myth, but to archaeologists studying the foundations of Machu Picchu and similar sites like Sacsayhuaman and Ollantaytambo, the difference in construction style is unmistakable. It is as if two worlds overlap, one historical, one prehistoric, one remembered, one erased. The stones of Machu Picchu are alive with mystery. Each block weighs many tons, carved from granite and shaped with an accuracy modern tools struggle to replicate. They fit together in irregular, interlocking patterns that make the structure earthquake-proof, a level of precision no simple chisels or copper tools could achieve. The site sits on a knife-edge ridge between two mountain peaks, surrounded by cliffs plunging into the Urubamba River below. Building here would have been a near impossible task, even for today's engineers with cranes and machinery. Yet someone did it, centuries or millennia ago, without leaving behind a single written word or blueprint. How? The Incas are credited, but their empire lasted barely 100 years before the Spanish arrived. Could they have truly constructed something so sophisticated in so little time? Or did they simply restore and occupy the remains of something older, a forgotten monument to a vanished civilization? Machu Picchu's location seems almost intentional in its enigma. It is invisible from below, hidden in the folds of the Andes, aligned with sacred mountains and celestial events. On the June solstice, the rising sun shines directly through the Temple of the Sun's window, illuminating its altar with perfect precision. The Intihuatana stone, the hitching post of the sun, appears designed to track solar movement across the year, yet its geometry also aligns with magnetic north. Was this simply religious devotion or astronomical science? Some researchers believe the entire site functioned as a kind of observatory, a bridge between heaven and earth, designed to synchronize human life with cosmic rhythms. But that raises another question. Why go to such extremes to build a city in such a perilous location unless its purpose was far greater than survival? Local Quechua traditions tell a different story, that Machu Picchu was built not for humans, but for the gods. It was a sacred bridge between the world of men and the celestial realm. Others say it was a refuge for survivors of a great catastrophe, a sanctuary for knowledge from a time before time. These oral traditions echo stories told across the world. The flood myths, the lost golden ages, the gods who walked among men. Could Machu Picchu have been a final outpost of that lost world, a remnant of an earlier age of human civilization that ended in cataclysm? The Incas, inheriting its ruins, may have turned it into a temple to honor what came before, preserving fragments of a history they could not fully understand. When Hiram Bingham first stood at the site in 1911, he believed he had found Vilcabamba, the last refuge of the Incas during the Spanish conquest. But later evidence proved otherwise. Machu Picchu predates the fall of the empire. Its precise function remains unknown. Some scholars argue it was a royal estate, others a ceremonial center, a spiritual retreat, or even a university for priestly elites. None of these theories fully explain the complexity of its construction or its isolation. The Incas were practical builders. They chose sites near resources, trade routes, or fertile lands. Machu Picchu has none of these advantages. It seems chosen for something deeper, a purpose that transcends politics or economy, something cosmic, perhaps even existential. There is also the strange energy of the place. Visitors often describe an overwhelming sense of calm, a magnetic pull in the air, as if the stones themselves remember something sacred. The Incas believed certain locations, huacas, held spiritual power, channels where the energy of the earth flowed strongest. Machu Picchu may have been one such point, strategically built atop intersecting ley lines. The stonework, the terraces, the orientation, all may have been part of an ancient science of resonance, designed to harmonize human consciousness with the natural world. Modern science can neither confirm nor deny it, but standing there, surrounded by clouds that move like living spirits, it's hard to dismiss the feeling that this place was not built merely to exist, but to connect. Comparisons to other mysterious sites only deepen the riddle. The polygonal masonry of Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman resembles that of ancient walls found in Egypt, Greece, and even Japan. The technique of fitting irregular blocks so precisely appears across continents separated by oceans. Could this architectural knowledge have originated from a single lost source, spreading across the globe before recorded history? The Incas themselves, when asked who built the great stoneworks that predated them, pointed to the gods. They never claimed full authorship, only stewardship. That humility may conceal an inherited legacy, a technology, a wisdom, passed down from a civilization erased by time. In recent decades, scanning technology has revealed something even more astonishing. Underground tunnels and chambers beneath the site, still unexplored, sealed for centuries. Local legends speak of golden libraries and hidden chambers that contain the records of the first people, guarded by spirits of the mountain, whether literal or metaphorical. Such tales suggest that Machu Picchu was more than a city. It was a message, a monument built to endure the erasure of the world, to whisper through stone when memory itself had turned to dust. When the Spanish arrived in the 16th century, they never found Machu Picchu. The site remained untouched even by conquest, as if protected by nature itself. Perhaps that was fate, the last secret of a world that knew it would soon vanish. The jungle grew over it, clouds hid it, until the modern world was ready to see it again. But the irony remains, even after rediscovery. Deep in the Indonesian archipelago, where the dense jungles of Java conceal secrets older than any written word, stands a monument that defies time itself, Gunung Padang. For decades, it was thought to be just another hill crowned with ancient stone terraces. Locals believed it to be sacred, calling it the Mountain of Light. But when modern archaeologists began probing beneath its surface, what they found threatened to rewrite the entire history of civilization. Beneath the top layers of megalithic stones lay buried structures, massive chambers, perfectly aligned platforms, and even signs of man-made tunnels, extending hundreds of feet below ground. The deeper they looked, the older it became. If the data is accurate, Gunung Padang may not just be the oldest pyramid in the world. It may predate all known civilizations by tens of thousands of years. Official archaeology long held that complex societies began around 4000 to 3000 BCE, with Sumer, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. But carbon dating of the deeper layers of Gunung Padang suggests something unthinkable. Human construction dating back to around 20,000 BCE, possibly earlier. That would mean advanced architecture existed at the height of the Ice Age, when humanity was supposedly still living in caves and hunting with stone tools. To mainstream historians, such claims border on heresy. And yet, the evidence keeps accumulating. Layer upon layer of volcanic rock arranged with geometric precision, mortar binding the stones together, chambers and passageways running deep into the earth. This is not nature's design. It is human intention, buried under millennia of sediment, as if deliberately hidden from history. The Indonesian government initially resisted these findings, fearing they would undermine established timelines. But persistent research led by geologist Dr. Danny Hillman Nadewijaja began to change minds. Using ground-penetrating radar, seismic tomography, and core drilling, his team discovered multiple layers of construction beneath the surface. Each stratum told a different story. The top layer, roughly 2,000 to 3,000 years old. The middle layers, up 8,000 years. And the lowest, staggeringly, around 20,000 years old. The deeper they dug, the more advanced the engineering became. It was as if the oldest builders possessed knowledge that later generations gradually lost, reversing the usual logic of human progress. Civilization, it seems, may not have begun in simplicity and evolved into complexity. It may have started in brilliance, fallen into darkness, and then slowly reawakened. Gunung Padang's architecture itself is a marvel of geometry and purpose. The terraces are aligned to cardinal points, their angles precise, their proportions consistent. Beneath them lie chambers whose acoustic properties suggest intentional design, perhaps for ritual, energy resonance, or astronomical observation. The entire structure seems to hum with mathematical intent. Some researchers argue it could be a pyramid-like complex, built to mirror celestial alignments, much like the Great Pyramids of Egypt or the temples of Mesoamerica. Others suggest it served as a spiritual or energy center, built according to principles of earth harmonics and geomagnetism. Yet, these interpretations remain controversial because they imply a level of scientific understanding long before the invention of writing, metallurgy, or even agriculture. The mystery deepens when you consider Indonesia's place in prehistoric geography. During the last ice age, sea levels were nearly 400 feet lower than today. The islands of Southeast Asia formed part of a massive landmass known as Sundaland, connecting what are now Indonesia, Malaysia, and parts of the Philippines to mainland Asia. This region, scientists now realize, was one of the most habitable zones on Earth at the time, rich in resources, stable in climate, and teeming with life. It could easily have supported large, organized communities. When the ice melted around 12,000 years ago, rising seas swallowed much of Sundaland, leaving only islands behind. If a civilization had flourished there, its cities, ports, and monuments would now lie underwater or buried beneath layers of volcanic ash. Gunung Padang might be one of the last remnants of that lost world, a hilltop survivor of an age erased by the flood. This theory aligns with ancient myths from across Asia and the Pacific. Javanese and Balinese legends speak of great kingdoms destroyed by rising waters. The Hindu epics tell of Dwarka, a shining city swallowed by the sea. Aboriginal Australian traditions recall the time the sea came in, drowning the coastlines. Even Plato's Atlantis story, describing an advanced island civilization destroyed by floods around 9,600 BC, fits the same timeline. Could all these myths be fractured memories of the same event, a global cataclysm that ended a forgotten era of human achievement? If so, Gunung Padang may be more than a local curiosity. It could be the smoking gun of that vanished epic. Mainstream scholars remain cautious, arguing that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. Yet, the physical facts of Gunung Padang challenge easy dismissal. How could Ice Age humans, supposedly nomadic hunter-gatherers, have quarried, transported, and precisely placed massive stone blocks weighing several tons? Where did they gain the organizational skill to design multi-layered structures? Why would they build on such a grand scale if survival was their only concern? The answers do not fit within the boundaries of conventional archaeology. They point instead to the possibility that human civilization is far older and more cyclical than we've ever dared to believe. Another puzzle is the site's deliberate concealment. Layers of volcanic ash and soil seem to have been intentionally filled in, almost as if the builders wanted to hide their work. Was this an act of preservation? An attempt to protect sacred knowledge from a coming disaster? Or was it part of a ritual, symbolically burying their creation to see the future with mystery? Whatever the reason, the result is the same. The structure lay hidden for tens of millennia, waiting to be rediscovered at a time when humanity was ready to question its past again. When viewed alongside other megalithic anomalies, Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, the underwater ruins off Yonaguni in Japan, or the pyramids of Cairo in Peru, Gunung Padang seems part of a global pattern. These sites share not only architectural similarities, but also the same haunting theme, advanced construction appearing far earlier than it should. Could these be remnants of a single, interconnected culture that spanned the globe before the rise of recorded history? If so, the timeline of civilization is not a straight line from primitive to advanced. It is a broken circle, repeating, forgetting, and rediscovering itself across the ages. As night falls over the Javanese highlands, the stones of Gunung Padang glow faintly in the moonlight. The jungle whispers through them, carrying the scent of rain and age. To stand there is to feel time folded on itself, as if the earth is remembering something it once tried to forget. The sight does not speak in words, but its silence is eloquent. It tells a story of greatness buried and rediscovered, of cycles of rise and fall, of the fragility of human memory. Perhaps we were not the first to build cities, to understand geometry, to reach for the stars. Perhaps we are simply the latest civilization to awaken from a long, collective amnesia. Gunung Padang stands as both a monument and a mirror. Beneath the waters of the Mediterranean, off the coast of modern-day Egypt and Greece, lie ruins that hint at a world long submerged, yet astonishingly advanced. Alexandria's legendary lighthouse, one of the Seven Wonders, is well known, but scattered beneath the waves are structures far older, predating classical civilizations by thousands of years. Ancient ports, stone walls, and geometric formations, now encrusted with coral and barnacles, reveal that humans built cities on coastlines that no longer exist, cities that were swallowed when sea levels rose rapidly at the end of the last ice age. These sunken landscapes challenge everything we think we know about the spread of civilization, suggesting that advanced maritime societies flourished long before recorded history, only to vanish beneath the waves. In the 1960s, French archaeologist Jean-Yves Empereur began exploring the sunken city of Heracleon near modern Aboukir Bay. Using sonar and diving expeditions, he uncovered streets, temples, and colossal statues lying underwater for over a millennium. Inscriptions revealed a thriving trade hub with Egyptian and Greek influences, a cosmopolitan city unlike anything imagined to exist at that early period. But the city's foundations were built upon even older settlements, hinting at continuous occupation spanning several millennia. The discovery suggested that coastal cities, which once thrived along the Mediterranean's edge, were systematically erased by gradual inundation and sudden cataclysmic events. If so, how many other civilizations, perhaps more advanced, had risen and fallen long before Heracleon? The phenomenon is not limited to Egypt. Off the coast of Sicily and the Italian peninsula, submerged ruins reveal straight roads, piers, and complex stone foundations that suggest sophisticated engineering. Some formations show evidence of earthquake damage, hinting at tectonic events that may have contributed to their disappearance. Likewise, underwater structures near the Greek island of Pavlopetri, dated to around 2800 BCE, feature streets, houses, and even burial sites. These cities, complete with urban planning and drainage systems, predate many classical Greek settlements. They indicate that the ancient Mediterranean was not a sparsely populated frontier, but a densely networked hub of commerce and culture, lost to time and rising seas. Geological studies confirm the rapidity of sea level changes at the end of the Ice Age. Between roughly 12,000 and 9,000 years ago, the melting of ice sheets caused the oceans to rise over 100 meters in some regions. Entire coastal plains were submerged, erasing towns, ports, and farmlands. Populations dependent on these areas were forced inland, leaving behind stone cities, quays, and temples now hidden beneath the waves. For civilizations capable of building monumental architecture, such losses would have been catastrophic. Unlike landlocked societies that leave lasting archaeological traces, coastal cultures vanished almost entirely, their existence preserved only in myths, legends, and occasionally submerged ruins waiting to be rediscovered. Consider Plato's Atlantis once more. Many scholars now note that its described location, beyond the Pillars of Hercules, near the Atlantic, could correspond to parts of the Mediterranean basin connected to lost lands during lower sea levels. Could Atlantis, or civilizations like it, have existed in these now submerged regions? If so, the tales of advanced technology, grand cities, and sudden cataclysm may not be myth at all, but echoes of memory preserved in oral tradition. The Mediterranean may conceal multiple layers of human history, each city built atop the remains of a forgotten predecessor, erased by the relentless advance of the sea. Underwater archaeology has only begun to scratch the surface. Modern sonar and 3D imaging reveal more than mere foundations. They uncover urban layouts, temples aligned to celestial bodies, and artifacts indicating trade, agriculture, and ritual life. These submerged cities hint at maritime sophistication, including navigation, engineering, and perhaps even early writing or record-keeping. Their builders demonstrated knowledge that should not have existed at the time according to conventional historical models. How did these societies acquire such advanced skills? Were they inheritors of a lost global network of knowledge, passing wisdom down through generations until their memory was ultimately swallowed by water and time? Trade would have been essential for these coastal societies. Archaeological evidence shows long-distance exchange networks extending from North Africa to the Aegean and beyond. Pottery, tools, and decorative items reveal cultural overlap and shared technological standards across regions separated by vast distances. This implies an interconnected world of commerce and knowledge, rivaling what we typically associate with Mesopotamia and Egypt centuries later. Yet, these networks left almost no trace above sea level, lost to rising oceans and sedimentation. What we see today is only a fraction of a complex prehistoric world that stretched across continents, existed on coasts we now assume were uninhabited, and thrived thousands of years before recorded history. The cultural continuity observed in myths across Mediterranean civilizations reinforces the idea of forgotten memory. Stories of lost cities, floods, and divine punishment recur in Egyptian, Greek, and Phoenician lore. Herodotus and Diodorus Siculus write of cities swallowed by the sea, while Egyptian texts refer to cities once located along now-vanished coasts. Even the Greek myths of Poseidon's wrath in Atlantis may reflect real historical events. Submerged cities, lost civilizations, and collective trauma preserved in legend. These narratives, often dismissed as allegory, may instead encode the memory of a world erased by natural catastrophe. The implications are profound. If the Mediterranean basin conceals layers of submerged civilizations, then our understanding of human history is fundamentally incomplete. Land-based archaeology cannot account for these populations, and conventional timelines may underestimate the scope of early human achievement. Civilizations capable of urban planning, maritime trade, and monumental construction may have existed thousands of years before we thought humans had the knowledge to do so. The seas, long considered barriers, were highways for these ancient peoples, allowing ideas, culture, and technology to spread. Yet rising waters erased their achievements almost entirely, leaving only tantalizing fragments for us to discover. Each new discovery beneath the Mediterranean is a reminder of history's fragility. Unlike the permanence of desert pyramids or mountain cities, coastal and island civilizations could vanish entirely beneath a few meters of water. Artifacts, foundations, and inscriptions remain, but are hidden from casual view, demanding advanced technology and deep exploration to uncover. The challenge is enormous, but the reward are greater. A glimpse of humanity's lost ingenuity, a map of our forgotten past, and evidence that the story of civilization is far older, more complex, and far more global than textbooks suggest. The seas, silent for millennia, may yet yield the full tale of a world that once thrived and disappeared, without leaving a trace. Across the Pacific, in the remote islands scattered like jewels between Asia and the Americas, lie clues to a civilization that thrived on the ocean itself. Polynesia, the vast triangle stretching from Hawaii to New Zealand to Easter Island, is often celebrated for its seafaring mastery. The Polynesians were exceptional navigators, crossing thousands of miles of open ocean in double-hulled canoes guided only by the stars, ocean swells, and bird flight. But what is less acknowledged is that this mastery may not have been a late invention of isolated tribes. It could be the legacy of far older maritime civilization, a network of seafaring people whose knowledge predates the written history of any continent. Could the Polynesians have inherited fragments of a vanished global culture, carrying its secrets across the Pacific when the ancient world was already collapsing under cataclysm? Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, embodies the mystery perfectly. Thousands of massive stone statues, some weighing over 70 tons, were carved and moved across the island long before European contact. How could society with no draft animals, minimal metal tools, and limited manpower transport such colossal monoliths? Scholars have debated whether logs were used as rollers, ropes and levers, or if the statues were walked upright using ingenious techniques. Yet beyond engineering, the island is covered with quarries, ceremonial platforms, and an astronomical observatory. Every structure appears purposefully aligned with solar and lunar events, suggesting a culture deeply aware of celestial patterns. How did a small, isolated population acquire such knowledge? Could have been passed down from an older civilization, already global in its reach, now mostly erased from memory? Oral traditions across the Pacific hint at this possibility. Hawaiian chants speak of great migrations guided by ancestral knowledge, of islands discovered and cultivated long before anyone else arrived. In Maori stories, legendary navigators named the Tupuna sailed the oceans, carrying sacred knowledge across the seas. Similar myths appear in Micronesia, Fiji, and Tahiti, accounts of distant lands, star maps, and navigational practices passed down across generations. To outsiders, these tales might seem anecdotal or symbolic, but modern studies of Polynesian navigation reveal that these oral histories encode precise astronomical, meteorological, and oceanographic information. Could it be that the Polynesians were preserving a memory of the global civilization that once mapped the Earth, centuries before their known expansion? Easter Island's moai are particularly revealing. The stones are carved from volcanic tuff, but some originate from quarries miles away. Transporting and erecting them required not only immense physical effort, but social organization, leadership, and knowledge of physics. Moreover, the placement of the moai was not random. Many align with celestial phenomena, echoing structures found in South America, Egypt, and the British Isles. Could these alignments indicate a shared understanding of astronomy inherited from a lost civilization? The convergence of engineering, astronomy, and ritual on such a small island suggests that the Polynesians were not just practical seafarers, but custodians of knowledge accumulated over millennia, possibly connecting continents and cultures long forgotten. The subsistence patterns of Polynesian societies add another layer of mystery. Despite limited arable land, they cultivated complex agroforestry systems, planted multiple crop species in strategic patterns, and managed fisheries with techniques ensuring long-term sustainability. Their ability to survive on small islands suggests inherited ecological wisdom, knowledge refined over generations and possibly passed down from a maritime civilization that had mastered the balance between human activity and environmental stewardship. Could these practices be the echo of an advanced society that existed before the post-Ice Age floods reshaped coastlines across the world, leaving survivors to disseminate its principles across distant lands? Further clues emerge from linguistic and cultural similarities across the Pacific. Despite vast distances, shared symbols, myths, and navigational techniques appear throughout Polynesia, Melanesia, and Micronesia. These patterns hint at a common origin, or at least prolonged contact over centuries, a level of coordination that seems impossible for small, isolated tribes to achieve independently. Some scholars now argue that Polynesian navigators may have been the last carriers of knowledge from a vanished seafaring civilization, preserving methods and stories that have been passed down long before the modern historical record began. The islands themselves, far-flung and difficult to reach, acted as repositories of ancient wisdom, carefully preserved by those skilled enough to traverse the open ocean. Interestingly, recent underwater discoveries lend weight to this theory. Submerged stone structures off the coast of Vanuatu and the Solomon Islands resemble foundations and ceremonial platforms, echoing architectural motifs seen in Polynesia. They suggest that the Pacific Basin was not an empty void during prehistory, but a hub of activity, a network of communities maintaining cultural and technological continuity. Rising seas may have erased the majority of their settlements, leaving only high islands as refuges. The Polynesians' mastery of navigation, agriculture, and astronomy could therefore be a direct inheritance from these drowned societies, a living memory of civilizations lost to the ocean. The cosmology of Polynesian societies reinforces the link to a deeper past. Stars, tides, and seasonal changes dictated agricultural cycles, navigation, and rituals. Sacred chants and songs encoded complex knowledge of planetary motion and celestial events. This suggests that Polynesian culture functioned as both a practical guide for survival and a repository for cosmic understanding, a system likely refined over countless generations. It is plausible that such wisdom was inherited from a civilization that existed before the rise of written history, preserved in human memory long after physical structures were lost beneath rising seas. As one sails across the vast Pacific today, the immensity of the ocean is humbling. Islands rise like scattered remnants of forgotten world, each holding secrets of those who came before. The Moai of Easter Island, the sacred mountains of Hawaii, and the hidden foundations beneath the waves all speak to a human story far older than textbooks suggest. Somewhere in the memory of these islands, in the stars above and the ocean currents below, survives the echo of a civilization that vanished without leaving a trace, its knowledge carried by the people who refuse to forget, keeping the ancient wisdom alive across millennia of isolation and adversity. In the desert of Egypt, where the sun scorches the sand and the Nile snakes like a silver thread through arid lands, lies evidence of civilization whose sophistication predates even the Old Kingdom. The Great Pyramids of Giza are often celebrated as the pinnacle of ancient engineering, yet closer examination reveals anomalies that defy conventional chronology. Beneath the familiar monuments lie shafts, chambers, and subsurface cavities whose purpose is still debated. Geological surveys indicate that the bedrock supporting the pyramids was cut and leveled with precision, far exceeding the capabilities of Bronze Age tools. Some structures even show signs of water erosion, suggesting exposure to massive floods long before the time the pyramids were built. Could be that the pyramids were erected atop the foundations of an older, forgotten culture, one that understood engineering, astronomy, and mathematics at a level we are only beginning to grasp today. The Sphinx, with its enigmatic gaze and weathered facade, adds another layer to the mystery. Conventional dating places its construction around 2500 BC, yet erosion patterns on the body suggest prolonged exposure to rainfall, not desert wind. Egyptologists have long debated this discrepancy, but a growing number of researchers argue that the Sphinx may be far older, possibly dating back to the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 BCE. If true, the monument would predate the dynastic pharaohs by millennia, indicating that a highly skilled civilization existed in the Nile Valley long before the world learned to write. This would mean that the knowledge required to carve colossal statues, align massive structures with celestial bodies, and construct enduring stone edifices existed far earlier than textbooks acknowledge. Furthermore, the layout of the Giza Plateau itself hints at astronomical sophistication that seems almost otherworldly. The pyramids are aligned with extraordinary precision to the cardinal points, and some researchers note correlations between their positions and the stars of Orion's belt. The alignment is not merely symbolic. It reflects an understanding of celestial mechanics, seasonal cycles, and possibly a cosmic calendar encoded into stone. Such knowledge, so precise and consistent, implies a civilization capable of systematic observation, measurement, and planning on a scale we associate only with much later cultures. How does society so early in history acquire such advanced skills? Did the pharaohs inherit these sites, modify and expanding them, or were they simply custodians of an even older wisdom? The surrounding areas reinforce the notion of lost knowledge. Subterranean passages, underground aquifers, and hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx and pyramids remain unexplored. Some claim these tunnels were ritualistic. Others propose practical uses for water storage or astronomical observation. In either case, their existence points to a level of complexity rarely attributed to prehistoric civilizations. If these chambers were part of an older culture, then the Egyptians we study may have been inheritors of traditions and structures already millennia old. The pyramids and Sphinx may thus be monuments not solely to pharaohs, but to a lineage of forgotten architects, engineers, and astronomers whose names were erased by time. The possibility of a global civilization emerging before the known timeline finds resonance here. Across continents, from Mesopotamia to the Andes, from Indonesia to the Mediterranean, similar patterns emerge. Massive stonework, astronomical alignments, and urban planning far preceding established historical records. Egypt's monuments fit within this broader pattern, suggesting not isolated development but shared knowledge, lost in a global cataclysm. Could the architects of Giza have descended from the survivors of a civilization wiped out by rising seas, floods, or tectonic upheavals? If so, the monuments we revere may be fragments of a vast, interconnected human story that predates our current understanding. Artifacts and inscriptions hint at continuity. Early hieroglyphs depict advanced engineering, sophisticated mathematics, and a symbolic understanding of the cosmos. Temples constructed later often follow the same geometric and astronomical principles seen in the pyramids. This consistency suggests that knowledge persisted across generations, carefully transmitted even as the original culture faded. The precision, scale, and endurance of these constructions defy simple explanations of gradual development. They speak of mastery already achieved, not learned over centuries. Even more tantalizing is the idea that some of this knowledge may have been deliberately encoded to survive catastrophe. The pyramids themselves could serve as repositories of information, designed to preserve wisdom in stone when written records were lost to flooding, fire, or conquest. The combination of astronomy, mathematics, and construction techniques may represent a deliberate effort to communicate with future generations, leaving clues for those who could decode the language of the ancients. In this sense, Egypt's monuments are more than tombs or temples. They are messages from a civilization that understood the fragility of memory and sought to endure beyond its own time. Modern technology continues to reveal surprises. Ground-penetrating radar, 3D scanning, and satellite imagery detect anomalies beneath the plateau, suggesting undiscovered chambers and passages. Some may contain relics of pre-dynastic cultures, perhaps the lost civilization that inspired the pyramids themselves. If excavated responsibly, these sites could rewrite the history of human achievement, demonstrating that advanced construction, astronomy, and social organization existed long before previously thought. Each new finding challenges a notion that civilization began in Mesopotamia or Egypt, suggesting instead that humanity's roots are older, deeper, and more complex. Ultimately, the Egyptian monuments compel us to reconsider the narrative of human progress. The pyramids and Sphinx are not merely the achievement of pharaohs. They are echoes of an older intelligence, hints of civilization that rose, mastered its environment, and vanished without leaving conventional records. The Nile Valley, with its hidden chambers, precise stonework, and alignment to the heavens, may be one of the final strongholds of knowledge from a forgotten epoch. To study Egypt is to peer into the shadows of a global story, one in which humanity's earliest achievements were far greater than history has yet acknowledged. These stones, weathered and silent, stand as a testament to a civilization that vanished without leaving a trace, yet whose influence shaped the world long after its disappearance. High in the mountains of Central and South America, beyond the reach of modern roads and radar, lie civilizations that confound our understanding of human development. The Andes, jagged and imposing cradle sites like Cairo, Tiwanaku, and Ollantaytambo, ancient cities exhibiting advanced engineering, astronomical knowledge, and urban planning that rivals the earliest Old World civilizations. Cairo in Peru is especially striking. Radiocarbon dating places it around 2600 BC, making it contemporaneous with Egypt's pyramids and Sumerian ziggurats. Yet the sophistication is astonishing. Multi-story buildings, amphitheaters, plazas, irrigation systems, and precise urban layouts. There are no weapons, no fortifications, suggesting society organized not around conquest, but trade, culture, and spiritual development. And yet, the origins of such knowledge remain a mystery, hinting at even older, vanished civilizations that may have provided the blueprint. Tiwanaku, near Lake Titicaca in modern Bolivia, presents an even deeper puzzle. Its monumental stonework, including massive gateways and temples, is carved with such precision that the stones interlock perfectly without mortar. Some blocks weigh over 100 tons, yet were cut, shaped, and transported over uneven terrain using technologies we have yet to fully understand. The site's alignment with celestial bodies, its water management systems, and evidence of long-distance trade suggest a complex society, thriving thousands of years before Europeans ever crossed the Atlantic. Yet little is known about the people who built it, and their culture seems to appear fully formed, implying an inheritance of skills, knowledge, and traditions from a preceding civilization lost to time. Across the Andes, in Ollantaytambo and other sacred valleys, the pattern repeats. Terraced mountainsides, intricate irrigation networks, and perfectly aligned temples suggest a deep understanding of both geology and astronomy. Roads connecting these sites indicate trade networks spanning hundreds of miles. Some terraces are cut into bedrock with precision that modern engineers find remarkable even today. How did these societies, isolated in high-altitude valleys, develop such advanced engineering skills? Archaeologists have debated whether they evolved independently or inherited techniques from earlier, forgotten civilizations. Given the scale and consistency across the continent, The latter seems increasingly plausible. Legends and oral traditions support this theory. Many Andean myths speak of the viracochas, or godlike beings who came from the sea or sky, teaching humans agriculture, architecture, and spiritual practices before disappearing. These stories often blur the line between myth and memory, suggesting a transmission of knowledge from an earlier era. The Incas themselves, who flourished centuries later, claim to have inherited sacred sites and techniques from these mysterious ancestors. Could these ancestors have been survivors or custodians of a lost global civilization, spreading knowledge across continents long before recorded history? The consistency of such myths across vast distances is difficult to dismiss as coincidence. Archaeological evidence also indicates a mastery of seismically active and unstable environments. Sites like Tiwanaku were built on high plains with frequent earthquakes, yet their structures have survived millennia with minimal damage. The stones are interlocked using techniques that absorb seismic energy, preventing collapse. Such foresight suggests not only technical skill, but accumulated wisdom, knowledge passed down and refined over generations, likely originating from civilizations whose existence we no longer fully trace. This reinforces the idea of cyclical human development, with peaks of achievement and subsequent losses of knowledge over time. Moreover, Andean societies demonstrated sophisticated understanding of agriculture, ecology, and resource management. Terraces and canals were designed to optimize crop production in difficult mountainous terrain, controlling water flow and preventing erosion. The use of microclimates to grow diverse crops, combined with storage facilities capable of preserving surplus for decades, shows a level of planning and environmental adaptation unparalleled in most contemporary societies. Such mastery implies that these civilizations were not merely surviving, they were thriving, using accumulated knowledge to harmonize with their environment. Where did this wisdom originate? It seems increasingly likely it was inherited from civilizations that predate even the earliest known cities in the Americas. Trade and cultural connections extend this mystery further. Artifacts indicate interaction between coastal and highland societies, suggesting networks that facilitate the spread of knowledge, materials, and ideas. Some researchers even propose that connections may have existed between the Americas and the Pacific or other distant regions, carried by seafaring peoples who preserve fragments of lost civilizations. The idea challenges conventional historical timelines, but evidence of sophisticated maritime navigation, combined with shared architectural and astronomical patterns, lends it credibility. The Americas, often seen as isolated until European contact, may have been part of a global web of knowledge far older than we realize. Religious and ceremonial sites reveal another layer of understanding. Temples and pyramids in the Andes were aligned with solstices, equinoxes, and planetary cycles, indicating advanced astronomical observation. Ritual practices emphasize harmony with natural cycles, reflecting a worldview that integrated science, spirituality, and society. This holistic approach to knowledge mirrors that seen in other early civilizations, suggesting a shared philosophy or perhaps a transmission of ideas from earlier cultures whose records have been lost. The Andes, in this sense, are more than archaeological sites. They are living testaments to a global story of human ingenuity that predates written history. Ultimately, the Andean civilizations challenge the linear narrative of human progress. They demonstrate that sophisticated engineering, urban planning, and astronomy were present on multiple continents long before conventional history records them. Their accomplishments, often appearing suddenly and fully developed, hint at the influence of older, vanished civilizations whose knowledge survived in isolated pockets, myths, and oral traditions. The Andes are not just mountains. They are archives of forgotten epic, a testament to human capability, and a reminder that the history of civilization is far richer, older, and more interconnected than textbooks allow. In the stones, terraces, and temples of the Andes, we glimpse a pattern repeated across the globe, civilizations rising to remarkable heights, leaving behind evidence of mastery, only to vanish without leaving a complete trace. Far to the north, in the frigid expanses of Siberia and the Russian Far East, evidence emerges of societies that flourished under conditions once thought too harsh for sustained human settlement. Archaeological finds from sites such as Archaeum, the Denisova Cave, and the Mammoth Steppe regions reveal a pattern of complexity and sophistication strikingly advanced for prehistoric times. Archaeum, often called a Russian Stonehenge, is a circular settlement with concentric walls, streets, and dwellings arranged with astronomical precision. Radiocarbon dating places its construction around 4000 BC, contemporaneous with the early civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt. Yet, unlike those regions, Archaeum demonstrates a unique combination of social organization, metallurgy, and celestial observation in an environment that demands extraordinary adaptation. The site challenges the conventional assumption that complex societies could only emerge in fertile river valleys or temperate climates. Denisova Cave, meanwhile, has yielded astonishing genetic and cultural insights. Fossils of Denisovans, a previously unknown hominin species, coexist with early Homo sapiens artifacts, suggesting interactions that may have facilitated the transfer of technological and cultural knowledge. Stone tools, ornaments, and evidence of symbolic behavior indicate intelligence, foresight, and social structure. If the Denisovans contributed knowledge to emerging human populations, could remnants of their understanding have influenced later civilizations in unexpected ways? The implications are profound. What we traditionally consider prehistoric may in fact be a continuation of a more advanced cultural and technological lineage, largely lost to time. Archaeum itself provides remarkable insight into engineering and urban planning. Its circular design is more than aesthetic. It reflects both defense strategy and astronomical alignment. Dwellings face inward toward communal spaces, emphasizing social cohesion and shared purpose. Streets are arranged in a grid that accounts for solar orientation, likely facilitating both daily life and ritual practice. The sophistication of metallurgy at the site, including bronze tools and ornaments, further demonstrates a mastery of materials and techniques previously thought improbable for this period. Scholars increasingly recognize that the northern steppes were not isolated backwaters, but hubs of innovation and culture, possibly preserving traditions inherited from civilizations predating the last ice age. Surrounding regions provide additional context. Stone megaliths, underground dwellings, and ceremonial circles are scattered across the Eurasian steppe, revealing a network of settlements with strikingly similar patterns of construction and purpose. Many of these sites show evidence of flood mitigation, water management, and climate adaptation, suggesting an intimate understanding of environmental engineering. These capabilities imply knowledge transmitted over generations, possibly originating from a civilization that rose and fell during prehistoric times, leaving fragments scattered across continents. The recurrence of similar architectural and astronomical patterns from Siberia to the Caucasus strengthens the hypothesis of a shared heritage or lost global culture. Oral traditions, though sparse in these regions, hint at ancient memory. Indigenous Siberian legends speak of sky people, great migrations, and civilizations swallowed by time and ice. These myths, often dismissed as superstition, align uncannily with archaeological evidence of sudden site abandonment or environmental upheaval. They suggest that the northern populations may have preserved fragments of narrative from earlier civilizations, a cultural memory encoded in ritual, language, and communal practice. The endurance of these traditions implies that even in extreme climates, knowledge could survive, awaiting rediscovery thousands of years later. Environmental factors in Siberia make the preservation of ancient knowledge particularly fascinating. Permafrost protects organic materials, while deep caves and rock shelters preserve inscriptions, tools, and ornaments. This accidental preservation offers glimpses into technological and cultural complexity that challenge assumptions about early human societies. Tools indicate metalworking, textile production, and sophisticated hunting techniques adapted for extreme cold. Astronomical alignment in Archaeum and other settlements suggests ritualistic or scientific observation, a link between earthly activity and celestial understanding that mirrors practices in distant civilizations such as Egypt and the Andes. The pattern emerging from Siberia is consistent with global anomalies. Across continents, from South America to Southeast Asia to the Mediterranean, we find advanced construction, urban planning, and astronomical knowledge appearing unexpectedly early. Siberia may represent the northern node of this prehistoric network, a repository of knowledge transmitted through migration, trade, or shared ancestry. Its harsh environment likely accelerated innovation, producing resilient, adaptive societies capable of extraordinary feats. Yet, like elsewhere, much of this knowledge was lost over time, obscured by climatic shifts, cultural change, and the rise of new civilizations. Ultimately, The Siberian archaeological record compels a reevaluation of human history. Sites like Arkham and Denisova Cave suggest that civilization did not emerge solely in temperate river valleys, but also in extreme landscapes where ingenuity was necessary for survival. These northern settlements may have preserved elements of a vanished global civilization, acting as waypoints for knowledge, culture, and technology. The evidence implies that human intelligence, ingenuity, and social organization existed far earlier and more broadly than conventional models allow. Siberia, with its megaliths, settlements, and ancestral memory, stands as both a repository and a monument, a frozen testament to the civilizations that vanished without leaving a trace, yet whose influence echoes across time and geography. In the arid expanse of the Arabian Peninsula, stretching from the sands of Saudi Arabia to the mountains of Oman, evidence emerges of human settlements that challenge conventional timelines of civilization. For centuries, historians believe that complex societies arose only after the Fertile Crescent, Egypt, and the Indus Valley began to flourish. Yet archaeological discoveries in sites such as Alula, Hegra, and the mysterious Neolithic tombs of Oman suggest that organized societies with monumental architecture, trade networks, and spiritual practices existed far earlier than previously thought. These communities, often overlooked because of their remote locations and harsh environments, display a level of sophistication that forces us to reconsider the origins and diffusion of human knowledge. The evidence suggests that the Arabian Peninsula was not a cultural backwater, but a crossroad of innovation, commerce, and ancient memory, preserving traditions that may have originated from a civilization lost to time. Hegra, also known as Madar and Sali, is particularly revealing. The site contains massive rock-cut tombs with intricate facades, precise carvings, and inscriptions, some of which predate the Nabateans by millennia. The scale and sophistication of these structures indicate advanced knowledge of stonework and urban planning, achieved without the aid of large-scale machinery. What is even more compelling is the alignment of certain structures with celestial events, suggesting an understanding of astronomy and seasonal cycles. This pattern is repeated across the region, from the alignment of stone circles in Oman to monumental cairns in Yemen, hinting at a network of societies sharing knowledge, religious beliefs, and technical skills over vast distances. The architectural and cultural sophistication implies that these societies were not isolated experiments, but inheritors of a broader tradition, potentially connected to a global civilization that predated recorded history. Trade and mobility were central to these ancient Arabian societies. Evidence of long-distance commerce, including pottery, semi-precious stones, and metallurgical artifacts, suggests that these communities were integrated into a wider network that extended across Africa, Mesopotamia, and South Asia. The Arabian Peninsula's strategic location, bridging continents and seas, made an ideal conduit for the transmission of ideas, technologies, and culture. It is plausible that knowledge from a vanished civilization, perhaps surviving the cataclysms that erased other early societies, flowed through these desert routes, preserved in architecture, ritual, and oral tradition. Such a theory challenges a notion that the region's significance only emerged with the rise of Islam centuries later. It suggests continuity of sophistication that reaches deep into prehistory. The Neolithic tombs of Oman further deepen the enigma. Circular burial structures, some hundreds of meters in diameter, exhibit careful planning, astronomical alignment, and sophisticated construction techniques. These tombs are not merely functional. They are ceremonial, reflecting spiritual beliefs, social organization, and a sense of permanence. Their construction required coordinated labor, precise knowledge of geometry, and long-term planning. What civilization inspired such feats? The absence of written records complicates our understanding, yet the uniformity and scale of these monuments imply inheritance of knowledge rather than spontaneous invention. The builders likely drew on techniques and traditions passed down over generations, echoing a global pattern observed from Peru to Siberia to Southeast Asia. Cultural and mythological threads offer additional clues. Oral traditions from the Arabian Peninsula speak of floods, lost cities, and ancestors who brought knowledge of the stars, agriculture, and engineering. These legends mirror flood myths from Mesopotamia, India, and the Americas, suggesting a shared memory of cataclysmic events that disrupted early civilizations. Whether metaphorical or literal, these stories imply that ancient peoples were acutely aware of environmental change and sought to encode knowledge and experience in durable forms. stone ritual, and architecture. In this way, the Arabian monuments act as both historical records and cultural repositories, bridging a forgotten past with the societies that followed. Environmental adaptation was a hallmark of these societies. The arid desert required innovation in water management, agriculture, and settlement planning. Terrace fields, irrigation systems, and strategically located dwellings demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of hydrology and ecology. Unlike civilizations in river valleys, which relied on abundant water, Arabian societies thrived in scarcity, suggesting a level of engineering and environmental intelligence that is easily underestimated. This mastery of harsh conditions hints at a civilization capable of surviving and preserving knowledge in the most challenging environments, skills that would have been critical in a world recovering from global cataclysms. The evidence from Arabia also points to potential connections with other ancient cultures. Similarities in architectural style, astronomical alignment, and ritual practice suggest that these societies may have been part of a broader network of knowledge, stretching across continents. The movement of peoples, trade goods, and ideas could have facilitated the preservation of technological and spiritual wisdom from a vanished civilization. The Arabian Peninsula, therefore, becomes more than a historical footnote. It is a testament to human ingenuity, adaptation, and memory, preserving fragments of a civilization that once spanned the globe. Ultimately, the Arabian archaeological record challenges assumptions about human history. Sites like Hijra al-Ula and Omani tombs reveal societies capable of advanced construction, celestial observation, and social organization, often predating civilizations traditionally recognized as the cradle of human achievement. These remnants suggest a continuity of knowledge and cultural sophistication that connects disparate regions, from the Americas to Asia to Africa, hinting at a vanished civilization whose influence persisted in hidden corners of the world. The Arabian Peninsula stands as a silent witness to this lost epic, a place where stone, desert, and sky converge to preserve the legacy of those who vanished without leaving a trace, yet whose imprint endures in monuments, myths, and memory. Along the shores of the Indian Ocean, the Maldives, Sri Lanka, and the coast of India conceal traces of civilizations that flourished long before recorded history recognized their existence. Submerged ruins, ancient ports, and stone foundations suggest that maritime societies thrived along these waters, mastering navigation, trade, and engineering in ways that challenge conventional historical timelines. Unlike river valley civilizations, these communities depended on the sea for sustenance, communication, and cultural exchange. Their achievement, however, were vulnerable to rising sea levels and cyclones, leaving much of their material culture submerged and largely hidden. The waters of the Indian Ocean, it seems, guard secrets of a past civilization whose influence may have extended across continents, connecting Asia, Africa, and even the distant Pacific. Off the coast of India, underwater explorations near Dwarka reveal a complex cityscape submerged beneath sediment and water for millennia. Archaeologists have documented streets, residential blocks, stone walls, and ceremonial structures, some dating back as far as 7,500 years. According to local legend, Dwarka was the city of Lord Krishna, built on the shores and eventually swallowed by the sea. While myth and history intertwine, the archaeological evidence suggests the city's sophistication. Planned urban layouts, fortifications, and large-scale construction reflects advanced engineering and social organization. These structures, now invisible above water, point to a civilization capable of coordinating massive labor, understanding construction principles, and engaging in long-distance trade. Similarly, off the coast of Sri Lanka, submerged platforms and stone foundations suggest the existence of coastal settlements that predate known kingdoms. These ruins often align with celestial events, mirroring the astronomical precision found in ancient Indian temples and urban layouts. Artifacts recovered from these sites indicate trade with the Arabian Peninsula and Southeast Asia, suggesting a network of maritime commerce long before formal historical records. The presence of such infrastructure implies not only technical skill, but social complexity, as constructing and maintaining ports, canals, and coastal defenses would have required organized governance, shared knowledge, and cultural continuity. The Maldives, too, harbor evidence of early human habitation and sophisticated maritime adaptation. Coral structures, submerged mounds, and shell middens hint at island societies that manage resources efficiently and develop architectural solutions suited to a fragile ecosystem. Rising seas may have submerged much of their settlements, leaving only hints in the shallow reefs and lagoons. Yet these remains demonstrate advanced environmental awareness, with early inhabitants understanding tides, currents, and sustainable harvesting techniques. This knowledge would have been critical to survival and trade, suggesting that early maritime communities possessed wisdom accumulated over generations, likely transmitted from a lost or earlier civilization. Maritime technology in the Indian Ocean region reflects remarkable skill and innovation. Early boats, anchors, and docking systems indicate that these societies were capable of long voyages, facilitating trade and cultural exchange across thousands of kilometers of open water. The diffusion of pottery styles, religious symbols, and technological artifacts across coastal Asia points to widespread communication networks. Some researchers speculate that these practices may have origins in a vanished civilization that once connected distant regions by sea, leaving behind only fragments of urban planning, ritual spaces, and oral tradition. In this light, the Indian Ocean becomes more than a body of water. It is a repository of human ingenuity, holding the submerged memories of cultures that rose and fell before conventional history recognized them. Legends across India and Sri Lanka reinforce the possibility of lost civilizations. Stories of cities consumed by the sea, of kings and priests fleeing cataclysmic floods, and of sacred temples lost beneath waves are prevalent in local folklore. These narratives, often dismissed as myth, may encode collective memory of rising sea levels at the end of the last ice age or other environmental upheavals. Oral traditions in coastal communities speak of ancestors who migrated, rebuilt settlements, and preserved knowledge from older civilizations. The consistency of these stories across cultures implies that memory of submerged civilizations was passed down for millennia, embedded in ritual, narrative, and religious practice. Environmental evidence aligns with these accounts. Geological studies indicate that sea levels in the Indian Ocean rose rapidly between 12,000 and 9,000 years ago, inundating coastal plains, low-lying settlements, and river deltas. Cyclones, tsunamis, and tidal surges would have compounded the impact, erasing much of the material evidence above water. The survivors, however, may have carried knowledge of construction, navigation, and social organization inland or to higher islands. This process mirrors similar events in Southeast Asia and the Mediterranean, suggesting a global pattern of civilizations rising, adapting, and being partially erased by natural forces. The architectural and cultural consistency across submerged Indian Ocean sites hints at sophisticated knowledge systems. Urban layouts, temple alignment, and port designs reveal understanding of geometry, astronomy, and engineering principles. These were not isolated feats. They were likely part of a shared knowledge network connecting multiple settlements across the region. The scale, precision, and planning suggest inheritance of skills and ideas rather than spontaneous innovation. This echoes the pattern seen in Southeast Asia, Polynesia, the Middle East, and the Americas, reinforcing the notion that humanity once possessed a broader, interconnected civilization that has mostly vanished beneath rising waters and shifting sands. Ultimately, the Indian Ocean submerged landscapes remind us that history is incomplete. Dwarka, the ruins off Sri Lanka, and the hidden foundations of the Maldives suggest maritime societies of remarkable sophistication, capable of trade, urban planning, and environmental mastery long before recorded history documented such achievements. These civilizations may have been linked to a global network of human knowledge, their traces preserved in waterlogged streets, coral-encrusted walls, and oral tradition. The oceans, often thought to conceal only mystery and danger, instead guard the memory of civilizations that vanished without leaving a trace, yet whose ingenuity shaped the human story in ways we are only beginning to understand. In the dense jungles of Southeast Asia, from the Mekong Delta to the highlands of Cambodia and Vietnam, the remnants of forgotten civilizations emerge, obscured by centuries of vegetation, monsoons, and shifting rivers. While Angkor and other Khmer sites are celebrated for their grandeur, evidence suggests that even before these well-known empires, sophisticated societies existed with advanced urban planning, hydraulic engineering, and astronomical knowledge. Archaeological surveys reveal terraced landscapes, intricate canal systems, and ceremonial centers predating recorded history, pointing to a civilization capable of large-scale coordination, environmental mastery, and cultural complexity. These societies, long hidden by jungle growth and natural decay, challenge a conventional narrative that Southeast Asia civilization emerged only in the early medieval period, implying inheritance of knowledge from a vanished, earlier global culture. The Mekong Delta region offers striking examples. Submerged cities, stone foundations, and raised platforms indicate urban planning adapted to monsoonal flooding and seasonal river shifts. These settlements were not random clusters of dwellings, but carefully organized communities with streets, plazas, and communal spaces. Canals and irrigation networks demonstrate a sophisticated understanding of hydrology, ensuring sustainable agriculture and water management in an environment prone to unpredictable flooding. The scale and precision of these works suggest engineering knowledge passed down from previous generations or possibly inherited from a now-lost civilization that mastered both construction and ecological adaptation long before documented history. Cambodia's jungles conceal equally compelling evidence. Archaeological surveys near Angkor Wat and surrounding regions reveal smaller, earlier temple complexes, some predating the Khmer Empire by centuries. These sites exhibit precise alignments with celestial events, indicating advanced astronomical observation. Inscriptions, stone carvings, and ceremonial layouts point to religious and cultural sophistication, reflecting a society capable of ritual planning, social hierarchy, and artistic achievement. The repeated pattern of urban planning, astronomy, and ceremonial architecture across multiple sites suggests the transmission of knowledge rather than isolated invention. The scale and consistency indicate a complex cultural memory, preserved even as earlier civilizations declined or were submerged by environmental change. Vietnam's highlands, too, offer clues to early sophistication. Terrace fields, stone megaliths, and fortified villages reveal a mastery of agriculture and defense suited to rugged terrain. These sites demonstrate careful planning, with settlement placement optimized for resource access, visibility, and climate adaptation. Evidence of trade networks, including pottery and metallurgical artifacts, suggests that these communities were connected over long distances, facilitating the flow of goods, knowledge, and cultural practices. This mirrors patterns observed in distant regions, from the Andes to the Arabian Peninsula, indicating a widespread, interconnected prehistoric human network capable of advanced engineering and social coordination. Oral traditions and legends reinforce the notion of lost civilizations. Southeast Asian myths frequently recount floods, migrations, and the rise and fall of great cities swallowed by rivers or forests. These narratives, often dismissed as folklore, align with geological evidence of rising sea levels, river course changes, and catastrophic flooding during the Holocene. The stories may preserve collective memory of environmental upheavals, providing insight into how societies adapted, survived, or vanished. Such traditions suggest that cultural memory, transmitted orally or ritually, maintained knowledge even as material structures were lost, a pattern seen globally in regions from the Mediterranean to the Pacific. The sophisticated hydraulic systems of early Southeast Asian societies are particularly remarkable. Canals, reservoirs, and terrace landscapes were designed not only for practical agriculture, but also for ceremonial purposes, reflecting an integration of technical skill with spiritual understanding. The engineering required careful calculation, long-term planning, and social coordination, indicating a high level of organizational capacity. The preservation of these techniques over centuries suggests continuity of knowledge that may trace back to civilizations older than currently recognized, whose achievements were partially erased by time, climate, and shifting rivers. Trade and cultural exchange further suggest a connection to broader networks of civilization. Artifacts show contact between inland and coastal regions, linking the Mekong Delta with maritime trade routes across the South China Sea. Pottery, beads, and metalwork demonstrate shared technology and aesthetic values, implying not only commerce but also the transmission of knowledge and cultural practices. The maritime orientation of these communities mirrors patterns observed in the Indian Ocean, Polynesia, and the Mediterranean, reinforcing the idea of a widespread network of early civilizations, whose influence spanned continents yet left few traces visible above ground. Ultimately, Southeast Asia's hidden civilizations compel a reevaluation of human development in the region. These societies display advanced engineering, urban planning, and astronomical knowledge long before the historically recognized empires emerged. Their sophistication suggests inheritance from earlier civilizations, possibly global in scope, whose memory survived in ritual, oral tradition, and material culture partially concealed by the jungle. By uncovering these sites, modern archaeology glimpses fragments of a human story far richer, older, and more interconnected than textbooks suggest. The jungles of Southeast Asia, thick with mystery and history, conceal the echoes of civilizations that vanished without leaving a trace, yet whose ingenuity and knowledge shaped generations that followed. Across the vast islands of Indonesia, stretching from Sumatra to Sulawesi and into the Moluccas, archaeological evidence hints at civilizations that predate known historical records yet display astonishing sophistication. While mainstream history often credits early development in Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley as the cradles of civilization, Indonesia's islands reveal urban planning, ceremonial architecture, and maritime expertise that challenge this narrative. Sites like Gunung Padang in West Java, with its massive stone terraces and pyramidal structures, suggest organized labor, advanced engineering, and astronomical awareness far earlier than previously recognized. The construction techniques, scale, and alignment of these structures indicate knowledge passed down over generations, likely inherited from a lost civilization whose memory permeated these islands long before recorded history. Gunung Padang is particularly compelling. The terraces rise over multiple levels, built with precisely cut volcanic stones weighing several tons each. Some stones bear carvings and patterns suggesting symbolic or ritual significance. Geological surveys indicate that the site's construction may have begun as early as 20,000 years ago, placing it far before the rise of known agricultural societies. The alignment of terraces and pathways appears to correspond with solstices, equinoxes, and other astronomical phenomena, indicating a sophisticated understanding of celestial cycles. Such knowledge, integrated with monumental construction, implies a civilization capable of organization, planning, and long-term vision, skills previously thought to emerge only in river valley civilizations. Maritime activity further underscores Indonesia's significance. The archipelago, consisting of thousands of islands, required early inhabitants to master navigation, boat building, and trade over considerable distances. Artifacts such as anchors, boat remains, and evidence of inter-island commerce suggest that these populations were adept seafarers, facilitating the movement of people, ideas, and technologies across vast stretches of ocean. This aligns with patterns seen in Polynesia and the Indian Ocean, implying the possible inheritance of seafaring knowledge from a broader, lost civilization. The island may have acted as waypoints or hubs in an ancient maritime network, preserving and transmitting knowledge long after its original centers had vanished. Cultural continuity is visible in the myths and oral traditions of Indonesia. Stories of gods, floods, lost cities, and extraordinary ancestors echo legends found in India, Mesopotamia, and even the Pacific. These narratives may preserve collective memory of environmental catastrophes, migrations, and the transmission of knowledge. Such tales often encode practical information. Understanding tides, stars, and seasonal cycles is essential for navigation and agriculture. In this sense, myth and memory operate as repositories of ancient wisdom, bridging the gap between lost civilizations and subsequent generations who maintain fragments of that knowledge. The engineering techniques at Gunung Padang reveal a sophisticated understanding of geology and construction. The terraces were built to resist seismic activity, a necessity in this earthquake-prone region, using interlocking stones and layered foundations to maintain stability. Water management systems, including drainage channels and carefully graded surfaces, ensured both structural longevity and the preservation of ritual or agricultural spaces. These features demonstrate foresight, mathematical precision, and a comprehensive understanding of the environment, implying that builders inherited knowledge refined over multiple generations or from previous civilizations whose records have been lost. Other Indonesian sites reinforce this pattern. Stone carvings, megalithic tombs, and ceremonial platforms appear across the archipelago, often aligned with astronomical events. The consistency in design, purpose, and orientation suggests a shared knowledge system and cultural memory. Whether on Sumba, Flores, or Sulawesi, the evidence points to communities that were not isolated but connected through trade, ritual, and maritime networks. This continuity mirrors global patterns observed from Polynesia, to the Arabian Peninsula, indicating that early humans maintained cultural and technological knowledge even as civilizations elsewhere vanished or were disrupted by environmental change. Environmental adaptation was a key element of these societies' longevity. Island populations optimized scarce resources, practiced sustainable agriculture, and developed architectural techniques to withstand climate extremes, flooding, and seismic events. Their survival depended on cumulative knowledge, passed through generations, and carefully preserved in construction, ritual, and navigation. This environmental intelligence, coupled with social and technical sophistication, mirrors attributes observed in other regions attributed to lost civilizations, suggesting a possible common source or global transmission of knowledge. Ultimately, the Indonesian archipelago serves as both a repository and a testament to human ingenuity. Gunung Padang and related sites reveal advanced engineering, urban planning, and astronomical awareness far earlier than traditionally acknowledged. Maritime expertise and cultural continuity suggest that these island civilizations were part of a broader network preserving and transmitting knowledge from an earlier, vanished civilization. The islands, concealed by dense jungle, volcanic terrain, and ocean currents, hold echoes of human achievement that predate conventional history, revealing that the story of civilization is far older, more sophisticated, and more interconnected than we have ever realized. Here, in the heart of Southeast Asia, the remnants of vanished civilization speak quietly but powerfully of human capability, resilience, and the persistence of knowledge across millennia. In the heart of the Pacific, the islands of Polynesia, Micronesia, and Melanesia form an intricate web of human settlement that has long fascinated historians, archaeologists, and navigators alike. While conventional narratives credit the colonization of these islands to small groups of seafarers venturing out from Southeast Asia only a few thousand years ago, mounting evidence suggests a far more complex story. The precision of navigation, the sophistication of agricultural and ecological practices, and the construction of ceremonial and monumental sites indicate that these island societies were inheritors of a deep-seated knowledge, possibly transmitted from a vanished civilization that once spanned continents. The sheer scale of these migrations, covering thousands of kilometers of open ocean without modern instruments, speaks to a mastery of astronomy, oceanography, and communal coordination that is difficult to reconcile with traditional timelines. Easter Island, or Rapa Nui, remains one of the most striking examples. Its moai statues, some over 70 tons in weight, were carved from volcanic tuff and transported across the island using techniques that remain debated to this day. Beyond the logistics, the placement of the statues demonstrates astronomical alignment, social hierarchy, and ritual significance, suggesting a complex society capable of long-term planning and preservation of knowledge. Oral traditions speak of ancestral navigators and long voyages, hinting at a memory of exploration, settlement, and the maintenance of cultural continuity across vast distances. These narratives, passed down for generations, imply that Polynesian seafarers may have preserved fragments of an older, global civilization's wisdom, integrating it into their own cultural framework. Hawaiian, Tahitian, and Micronesian societies further illustrate this inheritance. Star maps, navigation chants, and environmental understanding encoded in ritual practice reveal a sophisticated knowledge system. Navigators read subtle changes in wave patterns, bird flight, and cloud formations that traverse open seas, suggesting observational skills developed over countless generations. Such techniques are not isolated innovations, but likely the product of knowledge accumulated, refined, and transmitted over millennia. In many ways, these island societies function as custodians of a broader, now mostly vanished human civilization, preserving technological and cultural wisdom despite geographic isolation. Agricultural and ecological practices across the Pacific also reflect inherited sophistication. Polynesian settlers developed agroforestry systems, cultivated multiple crops in strategic patterns, and managed fisheries with techniques ensuring sustainability. They modified fragile island ecosystems with minimal disruption, demonstrating foresight, experimentation, and environmental intelligence. These practices indicate not merely survival, but an advanced understanding of ecology that parallels other early civilizations globally, from the Andes to Southeast Asia. Such ecological knowledge may have been part of a broader corpus of wisdom transmitted from an earlier civilization, lost in other regions but preserved in the dispersed islands of the Pacific. Trade and cultural exchange amplify the complexity of these societies. Evidence of inter-island contact, shared religious motifs, and linguistic patterns suggest networks that span vast distances. This connectivity implies not only maritime skill but also social organization, communication systems, and cultural cohesion. Some scholars speculate that Polynesians, through these networks, may have preserved fragments of knowledge originating from global civilizations that disappeared elsewhere due to cataclysms or environmental change. The islands, though remote, became repositories of technological and cultural memory, safeguarding wisdom that might otherwise have been lost. Ritual and cosmology played a central role in preserving this knowledge. Temples, meri, and ceremonial platforms were constructed with alignments to solar, lunar, and stellar events. Religious and social practices integrated observations of celestial bodies into agricultural, navigational, and societal planning. Such integration demonstrates a deep understanding of the natural world and reflects a worldview in which technology, spirituality, and survival were interconnected. The preservation of this knowledge across isolated islands suggests deliberate efforts to transmit culture, science, and societal organization, echoing patterns observed in other ancient civilizations around the globe. The archaeological record, combined with oral tradition and environmental adaptation, paints a picture of Pacific societies as sophisticated, resilient, and deeply knowledgeable. They were not mere isolated islanders, but custodians of a wider human legacy, maintaining and expanding skills likely inherited from civilizations that have vanished elsewhere. These islands serve as living archives, where stone, chant, and ecological practice preserve the memory of human ingenuity across millennia. In the vast, open Pacific, the echoes of a vanished civilization persist, carried by people whose knowledge, skill, and cultural continuity ensure that fragments of the ancient world survived long after its centers disappeared beneath waves, sands, or time. Ultimately, the Pacific Islands illustrate how human societies can inherit, preserve, and transmit complex knowledge across extreme distances and challenging environments. Their navigational mastery, ecological intelligence, and ritual precision suggest that they were part of a global web of knowledge, connecting disparate regions and serving as repositories of wisdom from civilizations lost elsewhere. The islands are not just remote dots in the ocean. They are enduring testaments to human resilience, ingenuity, and the persistence of knowledge, demonstrating that the story of civilization extends far beyond the traditional boundaries of recorded history. The Lycurgus cup is one of the most extraordinary examples of ancient craftsmanship, a Roman artifact that continues to captivate scientists, historians, and art enthusiasts alike. Created in the 4th century CE, this glass chalice appears green under normal light, but transforms to a deep ruby red when illuminated from behind, an effect known as dichroism. The secret lies in the incorporation of microscopic particles of gold and silver suspended within the glass, which interact with light in remarkable ways. Such a sophisticated manipulation of materials indicates an advanced empirical understanding of optics and material properties, long before the principles of modern nanotechnology were formally recognized. The cup exemplifies the intersection of artistry, technical mastery, and hidden knowledge, revealing the extraordinary ingenuity of Roman artisans. The craftsmanship required to produce the Lycurgus cup was nothing short of remarkable. The artisans had controlled the size, concentration, and distribution of gold and silver nanoparticles within the molten glass, a feat that demands precision even with modern equipment. The dichroic effect is achieved when these particles selectively absorb and scatter different wavelengths of light, producing a dramatic color shift that gives the cup its magical appearance. Achieving such control over materials without formal scientific theory suggests that the Romans relied on careful observation, iterative experimentation, and a deep understanding of their tools and resources. This empirical mastery demonstrates that technological sophistication in the ancient world could emerge from skill, intuition, and meticulous practice rather than formalized science alone. Beyond its material complexity, the Lycurgus cup is also a masterpiece of artistic expression. The exterior depicts a myth of King Lycurgus, who is ensnared by vines as punishment from Dionysus, capturing a narrative of hubris, divine power, and human vulnerability. The integration of a rich mythological scene with advanced optical technology illustrates a sophisticated interplay between form, function, and symbolism. The cup was not merely a vessel. It was a statement of wealth, knowledge, and cultural refinement. Its creation required not only technical skill but also artistic vision and narrative understanding, reflecting a society capable of merging intellectual, aesthetic, and technological achievements into a single object. The Lycurgus cup also demonstrates a capacity for abstract thinking in ancient artisans. Understanding that metallic nanoparticles could alter the visual properties of glass required empirical insight into cause and effect relationships at a microscopic level, even if the theoretical principles were unknown. This suggests that Roman craftsmen possessed observational acumen and experimental discipline, allowing them to manipulate materials to achieve predictable outcomes. Their work anticipated the scientific rigor of centuries later, showcasing how practical experience and careful observation could yield results equivalent to modern scientific experimentation. The cultural and social significance of the cup cannot be understated. Objects like the Lycurgus cup were likely reserved for the elite, serving as symbols of status, wealth, and access to specialized knowledge. Its dual optical properties would have astonished viewers, creating a sense of wonder and demonstrating the owner's refined taste and understanding of advanced craftsmanship. In this sense, the cup was both a technological marvel and a cultural statement, reflecting a society in which material mastery, intellectual curiosity, and artistic sophistication were deeply intertwined. Modern scientific analysis has revealed further insights into Lycurgus cup's structure and properties. Techniques such as electron microscopy and spectroscopy have confirmed the presence and size distribution of the gold and silver nanoparticles, elucidating the mechanism behind its dichroic effect. These studies have reinforced the notion that Roman artisans achieved an extraordinary level of material control and technical precision, centuries ahead of the formalization of optical science. The cup remains a tangible link between empirical mastery and artistic expression, demonstrating that ancient technologies often embodied hidden knowledge that transcended their apparent simplicity. Ultimately, the Lycurgus cup exemplifies hidden mastery in the ancient world. Its ability to combine artistic storytelling, symbolic resonance, and technical innovation reflects a level of sophistication that continues to inspire admiration today. The cup challenges modern assumptions about the limits of ancient technology, revealing that even without formal theoretical frameworks, civilizations could achieve results that astonish and inform contemporary science. It serves as a testament to human curiosity, skill, and creativity, illustrating how observation, experimentation, and artistic vision converge to produce artifacts of enduring wonder. In conclusion, the Lycurgus cup is more than a vessel. It is a profound example of ancient ingenuity, where the boundaries between art, science, and cultural expression blur. Its dichroic properties, intricate craftsmanship, and symbolic depth reveal a civilization capable of technological feats that appear centuries ahead of their time. Like other artifacts explored in this documentary, it embodies hidden mastery, reminding us that human innovation, observation, and creativity have always transcended the limitations imposed by historical context. By studying the Lycurgus cup, we gain insight into a society that understood its materials, experimented with their properties, and translated that knowledge into objects of both functional and aesthetic brilliance. Along the eastern coast of Africa, from the Horn down to the Swahili coast, evidence emerges of early civilizations whose sophistication challenges conventional historical narratives. While traditional history often emphasizes Egypt and Mesopotamia as primary centers of early civilization, sites such as Great Zimbabwe, Kilwa, and Lamu reveal complex urban planning, monumental architecture, and vibrant trade networks far earlier than widely acknowledged. These societies thrived in diverse environments, from arid savannas to coastal mangroves, demonstrating remarkable adaptability, technological knowledge, and social organization. The alignment of stone structures, the precision of masonry, and the integration of urban planning with natural resources suggests that these African civilizations were inheritors of long-standing knowledge, possibly originating from an earlier, globally connected culture that has largely vanished from historical memory. Great Zimbabwe, the most famous of these sites, exemplifies the sophistication. Constructed between the 11th and 15th century CE, the city's massive stone walls, including the Great Enclosure, feature precisely fitted granite blocks without mortar, demonstrating remarkable engineering skill. Beyond mere construction, the city's layout reveals careful planning. Residential areas, ceremonial spaces, and trade hubs are integrated with attention to functionality and social hierarchy. Archaeological evidence also points to long-distance trade, with artifacts such as Chinese porcelain, Arab coins, and Indian beads suggesting connections across the Indian Ocean. This level of organization, engineering, and international connectivity is astonishing for a civilization traditionally assumed to be isolated or technologically primitive by early European chroniclers. Kilwa, further along the coast, offers complementary insights. A thriving trading city from the 9th to the 15th centuries, Kilwa controlled trade routes connecting East Africa, Arabia, India, and beyond. Its stone-built mosques, palaces, and marketplaces display architectural sophistication comparable to contemporaneous Middle Eastern cities. The urban design demonstrates advanced planning, with water management systems, defensive walls, and aligned streets reflecting both functional and ceremonial purposes. Kilwa's economic and cultural reach highlights the region's integration into a broader network of exchange, suggesting that African societies were not only self-sufficient but actively participating in, and perhaps even contributing to, a global web of knowledge and commerce. The Swahili coast, including Lamu and Mombasa, further illuminates Africa's early sophistication. Archaeological evidence points to complex social organization, maritime expertise, and cultural synthesis, blending African, Arab, and Indian influences. Coastal settlements relied on deep knowledge of tides, monsoon winds, and navigation to sustain trade over thousands of kilometers. Maritime infrastructure, such as docks, harbors, and stone jetties, demonstrates both engineering acumen and long-term planning. These capabilities mirror patterns observed in the Indian Ocean, Southeast Asia, and the Pacific, reinforcing the possibility that knowledge from a lost or earlier civilization spread through maritime networks, influencing urban planning, trade, and technology across continents. Legends and oral traditions across Eastern Africa reinforce the presence of early sophistication. Stories of powerful kings, lost cities, and ancestral migrations echo throughout the region, sometimes corresponding with archaeological evidence of abandoned settlements or dramatic environmental change. These narratives suggest that African societies preserve collective memory of earlier civilizations, natural disasters, and technological practices through ritual, storytelling, and cultural transmission. Such preservation of knowledge parallels global patterns, from the Americas to Asia, highlighting a human tendency to encode wisdom in non-written forms when material records are threatened by time or catastrophe. Environmental adaptation was a hallmark of these civilizations. Inland and coastal communities engineered water systems, agricultural terraces, and urban layouts that mitigated seasonal floods, droughts, and resource scarcity. They demonstrated sophisticated understanding of local ecology, using controlled irrigation, soil management, and crop rotation to sustain dense populations over centuries. This environmental intelligence, combined with social and technological sophistication, suggests that these societies inherited accumulated knowledge from predecessors, echoing global patterns of lost civilizations whose achievements persisted in select regions even after widespread disappearance. Trade, technology, and urban design collectively indicate that Eastern Africa was part of a broader network of early civilizations. Connections across the Indian Ocean, extending to Arabia, India, and even Southeast Asia, facilitated the exchange of goods, ideas, and technological innovations. African societies contributed to and benefited from this network, demonstrating integration rather than isolation. The architectural, astronomical, and organizational consistency observed in cities along the coast implies deliberate preservation and transmission of knowledge, hinting at an inheritance from civilizations that vanished elsewhere but left enduring legacies in Africa. Ultimately, the archaeological record of Eastern Africa demands a reevaluation of global civilization. Great Zimbabwe, Kilwa, Lamu, and other sites reveal societies capable of advanced engineering, urban planning, maritime navigation, and long-distance trade long before Western historians acknowledged Africa's contributions to global history. These civilizations demonstrate continuity, adaptation, and sophistication, suggesting that Africa was both a recipient and custodian of knowledge from vanished civilizations. The stones, streets, and ports along Africa's coast are silent witnesses to human ingenuity, resilience, and memory, testaments to civilizations that disappeared without leaving a complete trace, yet whose influence reverberated across oceans, continents, and centuries. In the Mediterranean, long considered the cradle of Western civilization, evidence continues to surface of societies whose sophistication predates classical Greece, Rome, and even the famed Egyptian dynasties. From the islands of Crete and Malta to the coasts of modern-day Italy, Spain, and Libya, archaeological discoveries reveal urban centers, megalithic temples, and maritime networks that suggest a far more complex prehistoric human presence than traditionally acknowledged. The architectural precision, trade sophistication, and astronomical awareness exhibited in these regions imply the transmission of knowledge from an earlier civilization, one whose memory and influence were woven into later societies, yet largely disappeared from recorded history. The Mediterranean, with its natural harbors and temperate climate, became not only a hub of commerce, but also a repository of technological, cultural, and spiritual knowledge inherited from vanished civilizations. Crete, particularly through the Minoan civilization, provides compelling evidence of advanced urban planning and architectural achievement. The palace complexes at Knossos, Phaistos, and Malea showcase multi-story buildings, intricate plumbing systems, and organized administrative layouts. Beyond their aesthetic grandeur, these structures reflect functional planning, including storage facilities, drainage systems, and roads that facilitated trade and governance. What makes the Minoans especially intriguing is their sudden emergence. The sophistication appears fully formed, implying the inheritance of knowledge rather than gradual local innovation. Frescoes, pottery, and inscriptions suggest a society capable of complex communication, symbolic thought, and record-keeping, echoing patterns observed in other early civilizations globally. Malta and Gozo, with their megalithic temples such as Hagar Kim, Nadja, and Tarxian, reveal a mastery of construction that rivals better-known ancient societies. These temples, some dating back to 3600 BCE, demonstrate precise stone carving, astronomical alignment, and ceremonial planning. The orientation of the temples corresponds with solstices and lunar cycles, suggesting that prehistoric populations possessed advanced astronomical knowledge. The scale and technical precision of these structures indicate coordinated labor and social organization, reflecting a complex civilization whose roots may trace back to even older, now-forgotten societies. Malta's temples thus serve as tangible reminders that civilization in the Mediterranean was both ancient and sophisticated, with achievements often predating the so-called classical period by millennia. Along the Italian and Iberian coasts, additional evidence suggests widespread urban and maritime development. Early settlements show fortifications, roads, and harbor constructions indicative of organized society and long-distance trade. Artifacts, including imported pottery, metals, and ornaments, hint at connectivity with North Africa, the Near East, and even the British Isles. These findings imply that maritime networks were active long before historical records formally acknowledged them, facilitating not only commerce, but also the transmission of technological and cultural knowledge. The recurring patterns of urban planning, astronomical alignment, and ceremonial architecture suggest a continuity of knowledge, possibly inherited from a vanished civilization whose influence spanned multiple continents. Oral traditions, myths, and later historical texts reinforce the idea of earlier Mediterranean civilizations. Stories of sun temples, lost cities, cataclysms, and advanced ancestors appear in Greek, Phoenician, and Berber accounts. While often dismissed as legend, these narratives align with archaeological evidence of sudden abandonment, flooding, or societal collapse. They may encode collective memory of environmental changes, migrations, or technological knowledge preserved across generations. Such myths act as a bridge between vanished civilizations and subsequent societies, indicating that even when material structures were lost, cultural and technical knowledge persisted in altered forms. Environmental adaptation was central to the success of these civilizations. Coastal and island populations engineered harbors, irrigation, and agricultural terraces to maximize resources and protect against floods or soil erosion. The careful integration of settlements with natural features demonstrates environmental intelligence, social coordination, and foresight. These capabilities mirror patterns observed globally, from Southeast Asia to Pacific and the Americas, suggesting that these societies were inheritors of knowledge passed down from earlier civilizations, rather than isolated innovators. Such adaptation also underscores the vulnerability of these societies. Rising sea levels, earthquakes, and climatic shifts contributed to the partial disappearance of these civilizations, leaving only fragmented evidence for modern discovery. Trade, technology, and ritual further reveal the complexity of Mediterranean societies. Stone carving, ceremonial layouts, and urban planning indicate not only technical skill, but but also cultural cohesion and shared knowledge. The recurrence of architectural motifs, alignment with celestial bodies, and integration of ceremonial spaces with daily life suggest that knowledge was deliberately encoded into physical structures. This mirrors global practices observed in the Americas, Africa, and Asia, reinforcing the notion that civilizations worldwide shared similar methods for preserving and transmitting accumulated wisdom, even in the absence of written records. Ultimately, the Mediterranean provides a compelling case for the existence of advanced, interconnected civilizations long before the rise of classical antiquity. From Crete to Malta and the broader coastal regions, evidence of urban sophistication, maritime expertise, and astronomical knowledge suggests inheritance from earlier, vanished societies. The remains of temples, palaces, and settlements offer a window into a world of intelligence, organization, and cultural continuity that was largely lost to history. These civilizations, though vanished without leaving complete records, shape the foundations of Mediterranean history and continue to challenge our understanding of the human story, proving that the roots of civilization extend far deeper, more widely, and more intricately than previously imagined.